We've got a huge show for you today, and as a bonus, we've added our Hoka One One segment with Hoka One One NAZ Elite Coach Ben Rosario. It's now at the end of this podcast. Let us know. Send us an email at podcast@letsrun.com if you think we should drop stuff like this at the end of a podcast or have them separately. But big show today. Noah Lyles versus Christian Coleman, Sydney McLaughlin. You'll hear more. The regular intro coming up next. And if you got listener audio for us, you can call 844-LETS-RUN, option 7, and you could win a free pair of Hoka One One Carbon X shoes. 844-LETS-RUN, option 7.
Coleman gets perhaps the best start, Su Bing-chan right alongside him. Prescott not too far away either, but it's Christian Coleman moving away. Lyles is finishing very, very quickly, and it could be Lyles! Wow, what a finish! From nowhere at 50 meters, he came storming through. I said he might struggle to hang on to them early on, but goodness me, a little like last year when Prescott finished so quickly. Lyles gets it on the line, 9:86. Look at him, he's finishing like a train.
Thank you, Steve Cram, for the call of the 100 meters in Shanghai. That was the race of the weekend, undoubtedly. Noah Lyles against Christian Coleman, and I think it's a fitting way to kick off another edition of the LetsRun.com Track Talk podcast. This is Jonathan Gault. I'm going to be joined shortly by LetsRun.com co-founders, aka my bosses, Robert and Weldon Johnson. And we're going to talk Noah Lyles, Christian Coleman, Twitter beefs. We're going to talk Kenny Bednarek, who is the JUCO phenom tearing up the track. Gwen Jorgensen had heel surgery, so that's going to be something we're going to talk about. Controversy at the Iowa High School State Meet. Yes, we're talking Iowa High School running. 7 laps, 8 laps, you decide. Alysia Montaño, there was the focus of a New York Times article about pregnancy, female athletes, a lot of stuff to get into there. We've got audio of the week and much more. Weldon, Robert, good to talk to you on this Wednesday morning.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Please call us Mr. Johnson, since we're your bosses. And you're leaving out the big story of the week. The raccoon at Robert's house has been caught. We have secured the raccoon. Hopefully it's been taken to a safe place, but we'll get an update on that as well.
Robert, you're safe. Good to hear it.
Family's safe as well. I was quite proud of myself for quote unquote getting my man card back since I was the one that trapped the raccoon myself. But then my wife said, well, what about the other 2? So I'm not sure if I've successfully completed the project, but very excited.
Well, protecting the family, we like to see that. Let's start in Shanghai. Lyles, Coleman. I think it was a race we were all looking forward to. It maybe wasn't the headliner going into the meet. I think everyone was looking forward to Abdurrahman Samba and Rai Benjamin in the 400 hurdles, and that race didn't disappoint. They both ran sub 48, Samba getting a win, but Lyles and Coleman was the one that people were talking about afterwards, not just because it was so close. Lyles with an incredible comeback over the last 20 meters to come up and get the win by 0.06 of a second over Coleman. Both men credited with 9:86. That's a PR for Lyles. It's 0.07 off of Coleman's PR from last year in the Diamond League final. To me, my biggest takeaway just from the race itself was Noah Lyles emerging as a threat for the 100-meter title this year, because last year he won USAs, he ran sub 990, he was one of the best in the world, no doubt, but he said at the start of the season, he told Reuters he was only focusing on the 200. He left the door open. He said, maybe if something changes, I'll do the 100, but really the 200 was going to be his primary focus. And remember, Lyles, he's still a young guy. He's still only 21 years old. So I think they didn't want to put too much on his plate too early. But this win against Coleman, who was the best in the world last year, really shows that he's arguably if he's not the best 100-meter runner in the world right now, Noah Lyles, he's basically right on par with Coleman. I spoke to Otto Bolden earlier this week. He thinks for sure Lyles, this was enough to prove to him, hey, I'm good enough to do the 100 at Worlds. He's going to try for the double USAs and Worlds. I'm excited to see that. What was your takeaway from this?
Well, I'm glad that you guys actually watched the race. While the two, Jonathan Weldon, were both frolicking this weekend, Steve and I, unnamed boy Steve 1.1, Steve Soprano and I were both working at 7 a.m. on Saturday. So glad you guys did actually finally watch the replays. But no, my thoughts are, first of all, I will the race was amazing. I mean, as you've been talking about it, John, I've just been replaying it over and over on my computer. Like, Lyles is so far back. I've never if you just play the last 30 meters over and over, it looks like he's been shot out of a cannon. It's amazing. So his close was amazing. But John, I love the piece that you wrote in Let's Run yesterday, and I loved Otto Bolden's quote. And he said, no question, absolutely no question as to whether Noah Lyles runs the 100. So there's so much more money, I think, in the 100. I think he probably does it. My concern, though, is, and I don't not know if I'm a sprint expert to ask this, but do you get injured more likely by trying the doubles and stuff like that? I just don't know the answer to that.
It's a bigger workload, no doubt. You have to. I mean, remember Bolt in his final year? Why did he stop training for the 200? Because it was more time practicing, and it was just took more effort. And especially if you're racing, think about USA's. You've got the 100 and the 200. It's a 4-day meet, and you've got multiple rounds of each. It's tough. Collegians do it though. It's not that. It's obviously it can be done, but just doubling up it's very difficult to do, and we sometimes take it for granted that Bolt was able to do it year after year. But one of the reasons he did it at Worlds and Olympics all the time is because he wasn't racing as much in the Diamond League. He was always banged up for the last few years of his career. So it's an added strain, but Lyles is young. He's strong. I think he's up to the challenge. I hope he is.
As the leader of the Noah Lyles fan club, I believe I was the first person to point out and really promote him going undefeated in the Diamond League last year. He's never lost the Diamond League 200. I think this is great. We need a rivalry, but you really need a rivalry at 100 meters, right? If guys are rivals at 200, it's just not the same thing. It's sort of like heavyweight boxing. This was tremendous. Christian Coleman, like in America, nobody knows who either one of these guys are either. But Lyles has the tremendous personality, but if you become the top 100-meter person, you win the Olympics, Christian Coleman, people are going to notice who you are. So these guys have the opportunity. They're both being so young. They could both be here in 2028 in America. So I keep sort of talking about this window we have to build something in the sport. But if these guys could go at it for 6 or 8 years, I mean, that's a really long time to be at the top in sprinting. It'd be tremendous. And I'd love to see Noah Lyles try to run the 100 as well. I mean, he's made to run the 200. I like the rivalry aspect. I guess we haven't talked about that, but Coleman threw a little shade out there on Twitter afterwards, and just shows this is an early season meet in May, and he's kind of pissed that Lyles beat him. But hey, this is great.
No, it's awesome. We have to hit. Let's talk about Twitter. Christian Coleman and his girlfriend were both, taking some shots at Noah after the race. Christian tweeted from his account, "Some of y'all got the game messed up. The name of the game is world medals, but PRing in May is cool for social media dough." And he followed that up with, "Seems as if some people are confused. It's nothing wrong with the PR, but if your goal is to run fast in May to taunt and flex online, then your priorities aren't straight, in my opinion. The season is just getting started." So, yeah, if you know Christian Coleman a little bit, he's not the loud, outgoing personality like Noah Lyles. He generally is a little bit more low-key and understated. And so that's why I was a little surprised to actually even see him tweeting about this stuff. But he took notice that Lyles was celebrating this win and making it a big deal. And to be fair, I mean, running a PR, a world leader of 986, to win your first Diamond League 100, I'd be pretty happy about that. And I think, from what I've seen, I don't think Lyles was extending himself or doing anything too inappropriate. But if there's a beef between these two, I think that's great. I think it draws more eyeballs to the sport. It's more interesting to me. I don't want to see them fighting or anything. I don't think they're going to do that. It's not going to go that far, but I think it's good for the sport.
Okay, John, I'm fascinated by this. Well, first of all, when you interviewed Otto Bolden about this, did you know about the girlfriend's tweet already? Do you follow Christian Coleman's girlfriend on Twitter? Or did Otto tell you?
No, Otto told me about it.
Okay, I was amazed by that. But if you take these statements, and have we mentioned what the girlfriend says?
No, read that off.
So the girlfriend, who's a sprinter, I think, at Georgia, says someone gets an inch or win by 0.006 and they take a mile.
Crying, laughing emoji.
Yeah. I don't think that either one of these statements, if you actually read them, is that provocative or crazy. It's just the fact that it's sort of permanent on Twitter. But my question is, to me, they come off as insecure. Like, who was talking about all this? Like, this meet wasn't even on TV in the US. Was like, this is the problem with social media. And I find myself in the same way, even on the Let's Run forum. One person says something negative and you think, oh, everyone's out to get me. Oh, everyone's talking shit about me. No, I don't think so. But I think it's kind of interesting that they're talking beef. But John, Otto was pretty direct. He says, if these guys don't like each other, is it clear that they don't like each other, or is he just sort of speculating there?
I think he doesn't know too much about their relation. He essentially said his understanding is that he doesn't know of a big dislike between them, but I also think he doesn't think they're particularly close. And he knows Christian decently well because he's involved with HSI, which is Coleman's agency. So yeah, I think they're not super close. It doesn't seem like they totally hate each other either, though.
Maybe we should get Otto on the podcast. Or John, you should have secretly recorded him. Anyway.
Excuse me, Weldon. I did record him, but I asked his permission because I'm a professional. So maybe next time we can get him on the podcast. That was
a joke. I just meant to use it on the podcast. I assumed you actually recorded it, but I wouldn't use it on the podcast unless you'd ask.
Yeah, right, of course.
But maybe Coleman is reacting to Noah Lyles, what he posted on Instagram. It's there's two photos, but one photo, it's him at the finish after he's finished in Shanghai. He's got his arms out, both number one, very triumphantly. And then it says, today starts my legacy for becoming a 100 and 200 runner. And they going to say no one should have all that power. And then it's got a picture of a guy flexing.
Oh, that's pretty big then. I get it. I take that back, Christian and Goldfriend. I love it. Stand up for yourselves. This guy's flaunting it. It's like winning the prelims and then, doing a big dance.
Well, and the other thing is the finish of the race was very interesting as well, because not only did Lyles make up that big deficit, but as he was crossing the finish line, like before he even crossed the finish line, actually, he starts looking across the track to see where Coleman is. And he was doing an Instagram Q&A, and they were like, sorry, Q&A. And he was asked, were you looking at the clock? And he said, no, I have no reason to look at the clock. I was looking at Coleman. So he was sort of staring him down. Maybe then I'd have to ask Noah himself exactly what he meant by that. But the way I read it is sort of like, yeah, I think the way I read it is he was just wanting to check where Coleman is. But, you could interpret it as him sending a message and telling Coleman, yeah, I'm going to be here in the 100 this year. I'm not going away. Either way, I think it's good that these two young guys are both, there's a little tension between them, and we're going to have multiple battles. That's the other thing. Gatlin and Bolt, they basically just raced each other at Worlds and Olympics at the end of their career. They didn't really run against each other on the circuit. These guys, they have to run USAs against each other because the Diamond League, neither of them have the bye. The byes for the Diamond League won't be determined until the end of the Diamond League season. So they're going to be running the 100 and 200 most likely at USAs, maybe a Diamond League or two here or there. We don't need them running every week, but we need them running more than just once a year. And then, of course, hopefully a double showdown in Doha, and who knows, maybe Michael Norman hops down in 200 as well. I mean, it's going to be a good season of sprinting.
And that shows the beauty of the Olympic trials, right? These guys have to compete. It shows why the Olympic trials are so sacred in America and so wonderful, because just so much is on the line, right? And the fans get to see them compete beforehand. We don't need them to see them compete 10 times a year, but compete at a trials or USA championships with a world spot on the line, like that's big time. So IAAF, USATF still figure out that Olympic qualifying thing, because we need the top three protected at the trials.
Yeah, and just for the record, we still don't know how USATF's selecting their marathon team. Another week's gone by, another week without clarification, just for the update there.
What day are we at, John? We need a clock.
I don't even have a day. It's been a long time.
And we can talk a little more Shanghai distance stuff in a minute, but I think Noah Lyles and Christian Coleman, no one will even know who they are come 2020, because we have Kenny Bednarek, and we also have Michael Norman, who did some stuff this weekend. Let's quickly turn to them. Kenny B, as I call him, because, like Kanisa Bakila. He ran a pretty sick double, 1982 and 44.83 on the same day. And this is at the Junior College Championships. And, the 1982 was into the wind. Granted, it's at altitude. And the day before, he ran a 1949 200 meters with a huge tailwind. So both those are pretty sick. And just a freshman.
Yeah, well, a 20-year-old freshman. But still, this kid's the real deal. Sub 45 and sub 20 on the same day. I think Robert said it's only been done one other time in history.
Well, one other person, Isaac McLaughlin, has done it twice. He's actually gone sub 44 in one of those performances. So he ran a 43.
But wasn't that in like Cholafon or one of those questionable tracks? The Swiss track that always produces crazy times. That was from my memory. I don't want to discredit Isaac if that wasn't true, but
Too late, John. Too late. It's already been discredited. And I mean, that's pretty sick for a guy nobody knew who he was last year. I mean, he was in Wisconsin, I think, high school. Is that correct?
Now he's at community college in Iowa.
Date's wrong. We should give a shout out to his school.
Indian Hills Community College in Iowa.
Yeah. And he went to Rice Lake High School in Wisconsin. Now, he was pretty good at Rice Lake. I mean, he was state records at the D2 level at the 100, 200, and 400, setting all state records in the 2 and the 400. He ran 10:42, 20:43, and 46:68. So, guy was clearly a beast, but I mean, he's now at a whole nother level. He also had come in. I mean, he ran like 20-30 indoors, so this didn't come out of nowhere. He killed everybody at Drake Relays, running 20:29 there. But I've done the wind and altitude conversions using Jonas Muraika's calculator. Converts both those races from this weekend almost exactly the same, 1986 and 1987. So he's pretty good. I read where his coach talked something about him possibly going to USA's, but he sent out a tweet 3 days ago, and he said, it's been a long season. Can't wait to get home and finally relax. So I think that if he's going to go back to college and not go pro, that's probably a smart thing. Shut it down while you're on top. Because USA's are a long way from now.
Yeah, last weekend of July. It is a long season for a 20-year-old.
Unless Pre or somebody's going to give him a lane.
Wow, Kenny B's season was over before anyone got to see him run.
I read an interesting thing though, where I think it was Sprint Geezer on the message board, who's like an expert, self-professed expert at least on sprinting. He was saying that you can't read too much into a 200. He said there's a history of a lot of runners running a great one-off 200.
Hey, Clarence Muniai last year, sub 19.7. You guys don't remember him?
And they need to be consistent. He was worried about his form, but then he said like the choppy form works better than the 400. It was kind of interesting. But hey, I wouldn't say it's a one-off because he's done it on 2 straight days, and he ran 20:30 indoors, which is pretty steadily as well.
No, he's the real deal. I'm excited to see what he can do. And actually, Muniai gave him a little crap right there, but he's only 21 years old as well, so he might still have more up his sleeve. He was third in Shanghai over the weekend.
But on a converted basis, Kenny B was not the best 200-meter runner this weekend. Michael Norman, 1984 in in Osaka, into the wind. So that equates to 1981 for 200 under no wind, no altitude. I mean, Osaka's pretty much sea level. Being the head of the self-proclaimed Noah Lyles 200-meter fan club, I want Noah Lyles to never lose a 200 at the Diamond League. I started to get a little bit worried, but I want you guys to tell me what the slowest 200 was last year that Noah Lyles ran.
Weren't they all like 19.6, 19.7? 19.73.
I'm going to say 19.69.
Wow. You guys are both pretty good. His first race in Doha, he ran 1983, and then everyone after that was under 19.7. So yeah, all between 1965 and 1969. So very consistent.
Yeah, but I mean, I have no doubt that Norman can run that fast at some point. It's a question of getting in the same race as Lyles, and also, but I think Norman, his best event is clearly the 400. Lyles is the 200. So I think if they're both at their best, it's probably Lyles. But if he runs 42 seconds in the 400 this year, which he could, it's going to be running like 19.4 or 19.5 in the 200 probably.
John, later in the show, we're going to have hot audio from the listeners, and they want more hot takes. Clearly, you're wrong, John. I mean, I think that Norman's best event is the 800. He's a sub 140 800-meter runner. Okay, that's a joke, but this does get me thinking, like, what could Lyles run for 400?
That's everyone always wants to project. It's like
it seems like Lyles is better than these guys. I think he might be better than Coleman. His start's not good enough.
I mean, what was the big question about Usain Bolt in his career? He ran the 100 and 200. Yeah, but what could that guy do in the 400 or the long jump? That's what people wanted to know.
And hey, right, we're talking about guys who can do 200 and 400, and then Lyles can do 200 and 100, but we haven't talked about him. We're 20 minutes in. We've had sprint discussion. You guys know where I'm going?
White Lightning.
Matthew Boling, baby.
100, 200, and 400. His schedule came out for the summer. I don't know if you guys saw this last night. no USA seniors. He'll be doing USA juniors and then the USA junior Pan Am team. So maybe a good decision for him, but like a bad decision for sprint fans who somehow wanted to see him take on the best.
He's blowing up, though. He was on Saturday Night Live, mentioned him this weekend, when was the last time any track athlete outside of Usain Bolt was mentioned on Saturday Night Live? I can't remember. But also, Weldon, you're giving him credit in the 100, 200, and 400. This guy is ranked 5th in the United States in the long jump this year. 5th in the entire country, not just high schoolers. So if we're talking about, I know he says he wants to do the Pan Ams, but I don't think he has any chance to make the team to Worlds in the 100. But doing the long jump, I think he's got an outside shot to do that. So that would be very interesting if he gave the long jump a shot at USA's. But he's a high schooler. It's up to him and his coach.
My question is, who's calling the shots here? Is this some elaborate plan by Petros? I don't even know how to say Petros' last name. John, do you know how to say it?
Cipriano, I believe.
Cipriano, the Georgia coach, so he won't go pro early, so he doesn't run against USA's and smoke everybody. This is what has to happen, folks. If he doesn't want to run USA seniors, that's fine. But this guy needs to get a lane at the Prefontaine Classic in the 100. He might get smoked, but how exciting would that be? He needs to be in the 100 of the Pre-Classic. Put Kenny B in there as well. I know it's June 30th, so it's kind of a ways off, but it's not that long, certainly for Boling, if he's going to be running USA's anyway. So they put high schoolers in pre and the distance races all the time. So why not Boling, Pre-Classic 100, put them in there now. I don't know how to get start my consulting services out there. My creative ideas for the sport are so much better than what we're seeing. It's just like ridiculous. Y'all saw my World Marathon Majors proposal that's just out in the week that was, correct?
Yeah, Robert, I have a genuine question about that, actually. And Robert's proposal is that we go, if you want to go to up to 8 majors, because the World Marathon Majors has announced that the Chengdu Marathon in China, a race which no one has heard of and which only came into existence in 2017, is now has candidate status. So they're studying whether they're going to add it to the majors or not. And they're also doing that with the Singapore Marathon from a few years ago. But yeah, Robert's suggestion is if they go to 8 majors, they eliminate the elite pro fields from half of them. So you have four of them have a super good men's good elite field, and 4 of them have a really good women's elite field.
Let me clarify, make that a little easier to understand. My proposal is there's 6 World Marathon majors now. They're thinking about adding one more. So I'm like, we're going to have 7 majors? Like, really? Like, what sport has 7 majors? That's too many. So then I thought, well, okay, if we're going to do more, maybe we go to 8. But what we do is we don't have a men's and women's pro race at each one. We have a men's pro race in New York, a women's pro race in Boston. And that way you only have 4 majors of each sex. And it's much better for the viewing public because you can focus on one race instead of having these dumb TV cameras. If they won't start the races far enough apart that one finishes when the other one's at halfway, then we only focus on one race because this world is enough. Our attention is already divided enough with Twitter and Facebook and phones and crap. We need to be able to focus on a race for 2 hours. It's good for the world to focus on one race for 2 hours.
So wait, my question to you, Robert, though, would you prefer that over the structure we currently have? 8 majors, but with only one gender being elite race per major, or 6 majors with the current format? What would you prefer?
That's a good question. I mean, I like what we have now, but you have 4 really good races. It would force the guys to race each other even more. Like the majors would be even more dramatic, really. But the only problem is like if one race is a dud, then you don't have anything to distract yourself. Yeah, I think my idea might be even better.
I agree in theory with the principle of 4 majors because that's what other sports have. And even talking about the Diamond League, I don't think the solution is for the guys to race like 8 times a year, 6 times a year. I mean, 6 is better. 4 times is actually probably better. But in theory, okay, 4 is better. But then like what, you're going to have like one year, the New York City Marathon is the women's pro race and you're going to have this other men's race and people would still try to win it and the TV's still going to cover it and locally it's still going to be covered. So in practicality, it doesn't really work. I think we're fine with the majors we have. Is it just now a money grab just to sort of market yourself around the world? Like, look how great we are. Like, so we can bring in more sponsors. Like you have a tight knit group. I don't see what's wrong with just keeping what we have, or why couldn't Rotterdam bring it? Just going to China just seems like such a total cop out, right? To some race that has no prestige, no nothing. And now you're saying like, hey, you pay enough money, you can become a major. Like, okay, what about Why isn't Dubai a major then?
Well, it's because we're thinking of this from the elite perspective, okay? And the World Marathon Majors, while they do a lot to promote the elite end of the sport, they also want to promote themselves just as races and as financial entities. And that's why you have this 6-star finisher medal that they've given out, encouraging everyone to go across the world and run all these all these races. And China, marathoning is becoming quite popular in China, so they might want to establish a beachhead there. I can understand sort of from a business perspective that not every decision they're going to be making is about the elite of the elite because it's a small portion of their field. But yeah, I think you made a good point, Weldon. It's like people are always going to care who wins the New York City Marathon or the Boston Marathon. And you don't want to have, the Boston Marathon champion with an asterisk for the men's winner. You don't want to have some guy winning it in 2:16 who's this weekend warrior, Well, not a weekend warrior, but sub elite.
I hadn't thought about that's a good point, Weldon, but it would be interesting. You're the amateur champion. You could mark it as amateur champion. My other theory for these majors is we need to put some variance in there or spice it up a little bit. Put a rabbit in New York every other year. So you have the rabbited champion and the unrabbited champion. It's like Comrade is the up and down champion. Like these races just keep doing the same thing every single year. There's no change, whatever. So I don't think it would be that bad if we had the amateur champ in Boston. The problem is the shoe companies would probably send some, there's so many, 209 Kenyans that would probably show up just for the publicity.
No, Steven Van Gampleer. You guys remember him? He could make a career out of this.
How could I forget winning the Boston 2019 Boston Marathon Open champion?
Right. We already have this. A guy like that would win the open race every time.
All right. I think we talked about Shanghai a little bit, but there's a few things we missed out on there. One of them, I want to talk about distance races here, guys. We're LetsRun.com. We're just talking about sprinting. That's pretty off-brand for us. The 5,000 meters men's. Yomif Kejelcha gets the win. Not a huge surprise there. He looked good. He waited until the backstretch to really start picking it up, and then when he went hard, pulled away to get the win. Selman Barega, who beat him in Brussels last year in the Diamond League final, couldn't quite hold on at the end. So good win for Kejelcha, but are you guys worried? Paul Chelimo, 12th place, 13:13. He was almost 10 seconds behind Kejelcha, and if you remember in the Diamond League final last year, he was also way back. He ran 12:57, which was a PR for him, but he was about 14 seconds off the win. Any concern about Paul Chelimo getting smoked in this race?
Yes. So I wasn't working on Saturday at my annual golf outing. I ran into a Let's Run guy last year at this thing. Didn't see him this year. Embarrassing myself on the golf course for 2 days. Race was on. I was trying to watch it on my phone. And the 5K was coming to an end, and I was real quickly kind of trying to zoom in and look and see where the hell Chelimo was, like which of these guys was. And it was like final lap, and I hadn't been watching any of it previously, and I couldn't make him out. I'm like, well, he's got to be one of those guys, but I guess he wasn't. So of course there's some concern, but not a lot. He changed completely what he did this winter, right? He didn't race any indoors, and he did the New York City half marathon, which didn't seem to go that well. It went so-so. But Worlds are so much later. USA's is later. I think Paul could have the chance to, try something differently, maybe go less intense. So he's not very old. I just feel like, okay, he just didn't hit it as hot. Come back to me in a month, see where he's at.
John, my question for you is, what did Paul Chelimo run in Shanghai last year?
He was second place. He just got outkicked by Bahanu Balu. Yeah, I mean, he
oh
might have.
God! Run. First of all, that was supposed to make you look bad. How in the hell did you know that?
It's my job.
I mean, I don't remember random facts. I was going to point out that he did run 13:09.66, but that's misleading because first of all, Shanghai wasn't a Diamond League event. The 5,000 was a Diamond League event for the men last year, and he only lost by 0.02 in that race. So,
and he looked over his shoulder about 20 times on the final lap.
So the race wasn't that much different, time-wise, but...
No, but there's a huge difference between running 13:09 and getting barely outkicked for second and getting totally smoked on the final 2 laps like he did. He just wasn't even in contention. And to me, I'm not... Yeah, he's had some bad races before. If you remember a couple years ago at the pre-classic, he didn't look that good, and he ended up medaling at Worlds. And in 2016, he barely made the Olympics team, and then he got the silver in Rio. Like, this guy, sometimes everyone has a bad race here or then, so I'm not going to totally worry about this. But if we get to USA's and he's getting beat, or he's off his game there, then you start getting worried. But I'll give him some time. Especially, he's got the 10,000 in Stockholm coming up, where he's trying to probably the Olympic standard, but definitely the world standard, because he wants to do both this year. So we'll see how that goes. That'll be interesting. He's never run a top level 10,000. Actually, according to his his Tilstapaja, his last 10,000 meters was the 2011 NAIA Championships in Marion, Indiana, which he ran. Oh, according to this, my 10,000 meter personal best is actually 1 second faster than Paul Chelimo's on the track. It says his is 29:44, mine's 29:43. So I can be officially faster than him, at least on the track, for about 9 more days.
What do you guys think about him trying to be a 10,000 meter runner? I don't know. I assume some guys can move up, but some guys I think aren't suited for that. And his half didn't go that well. So maybe it's all new to him, and by Worlds it'll be fine. But they're very different. The 5K and 10K can be different beasts. I mean, I guess recently most of the guys have been good at both. But if you're more of a 15 guy, the 5 might be more where you max out on the track. I just think he should focus on the 5, but whatever. I mean, he's got to get in the 10 somewhere, right, to get the standards.
Yeah, I don't know. Why not try it? I mean, he's been very successful in the 5,000, silver and bronze, the last 2 worlds. To me, I think racing a couple 10,000s, I don't think it's going to make him worse at the 5,000. I mean, though maybe I think the winter he did more endurance training this year, but I think that was also just geared towards making him a better 5,000 runner as well, because he got dropped in Brussels. So to me, I don't see any harm in trying it out. If it goes disastrously, you bag it. And also remember, this year at Worlds, the 5,000's first. So he has nothing to lose by entering the 10,000 afterwards.
Yes, with nothing to lose, there's no reason not to do it. And I like that he's changing things up. I mean, he was significantly behind them in terms of where he needed to be at the end of last year. He thinks, I need to get more endurance. So if he's behind and where, he's 15 seconds behind now, but he's got...
No, he was like 9 seconds behind in Shanghai.
He's got June, July, August, September. He's got 4+ months to get back in shape. So if you're a 5,000 meter runner, I've started a message board thread. It's in the week that was. Why do the Kenyan men now suck at the 5,000? One thing to notice about Shanghai is the top 5 finishers were all Ethiopian. The top 5 finishers last year in the world were also born in Ethiopia. So you really have to go back like 5 years to even find a Kenyan that has broken 12:55 in the 5,000, whereas 22 Kenyans have done that in history. And the question I had on Let's Run this morning was, what explains the sort of the Kenya being bad at the 5,000? And I'm reading the message board. There's already 20 posts on there. It's only been up for like an hour or two. A lot of people are saying, oh, the money on the roads. But I try to get people to understand, yes, there's a lot more money on the roads. There's a lot more money in the road races, particularly, unless you're one of the very top people in the world on the track, it doesn't make sense to run the track. But that doesn't explain, that would be true for the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians are still running well at the 5,000. The Kenyans aren't. People are talking about drug testing. Well, that's also true for the Ethiopians. So it's interesting to me, and actually Paul Chelimo is, a Kenyan born guy that's running pretty well for America, although I guess he hasn't run under 12:55. So do you guys have any theories that pop out of the top of your head? Or are we going to have to just rely on the masses to tell us the answer?
EPO doesn't work in the 5,000. No, just kidding. Kind of jaded by this whole drug thing. Eunice Kurwa, Olympic silver medalist, is now tested positive to go with Jemima Sungong, Olympic gold medalist in the marathon. Pretty soon. Hey, Shalane Flanagan, she's 1 spot away from the podium now. But I was going to say not drugs, but I was going to say money. But you're right, money's involved everywhere. But the one thing I think that's different between Kenya and Ethiopia is Ethiopia maybe is a little more top down in the training. So somehow maybe through the federation, they could still put the focus on the 5K and the track stuff. Whereas in Kenya, there's just so many more runners, I feel like, or Ethiopia is getting more numbers now, but there's just more people. It's kind of a little more anything goes. So people might just gravitate to where they see the money. So the group culture of Kenya could have shifted more to the roads than in Ethiopia. I mean, there's sort of a cultural things that go on sort of behind the scenes that we may not be seeing. All right, guys. Earlier I mentioned golf, and at the golf tournament, my buddy's wife, she's a doctor, and she was saying how she takes CBD oils. So that reminded me, we've not done a sponsor plug. Don't be done buying CBD off the street. Like at my corner here at 104 and Broadway in New York, pharmacy's now got a sign out. It said CBD oils. I almost took a picture and said, no, don't buy CBD oil here. You need to buy it from floydsofleadville.com, sponsor of the podcast. These are certified CBD products designed for runners for recovery, or some people even take CBD if you can't sleep. So if you're thinking about a new way for recovery, consider floydsofleadville.com. Use code RUN2019 to save 15%.
I don't even know anything about CBD products. Well, I'll let you handle all that, but I did read something on the internet like that a lot of CBD products are fake, even at like pharmacies. So I think it is good that they order from Floyd's of Leadville. I will give that plug. And I'm not just making it up. Like I read that knowing nothing about it. So got to pump the sponsors.
Chris Lear, author of Running the Buffalo, is calling me right now. Shall we put him live on speakerphone on the podcast? Let's try this.
Sure, why not? We can always edit him out if he says something.
Chris,
You're live.
Chris, you're live on our podcast.
Nice. Ask me anything about running. I have an answer for you.
You just tell us what are your impressions of the running world? Like, what's the big thing going on right now?
I think the big thing in the running world right now is that Noah Lyles is the best sprinter in the world, and people are overlooking the pedigree. Who is Noah Lyles' father?
Oh wow, I have no idea. I thought
They were both college. He was the son of college sprinters. I know that.
No idea.
Oh, you can't hear John. Yeah, John said his dad was a college sprinter. Yeah, no idea.
So was his mom.
His dad was Kevin Lyles, 45.01 400-meter runner for Seton Hall University in the mid-'90s, and world championship team member in 1997. I think he got a gold medal in 4x4.
I remember Kevin Lyles. I had no idea that was his dad. Like you always see his mom at meets.
It's amazing.
Wow.
And his mother was an All-American sprinter as well at Seton Hall. And Seton Hall no longer has a men's track team. I don't know if they still have a women's team.
Wow.
Or did they bring it back? Maybe they brought it back. I think they got rid of it for a while.
How'd you know? I mean, I guess New Jersey proud, right?
His dad's a huge Seton Hall fan.
New Jersey pride. But actually, I didn't know because I saw Noah Lyles. I saw it, and somehow I never saw it written that his father was a damn good runner. Franklin High School, Seton Hall University.
All right, thank you. What else should we know? That was pretty good, actually.
That was pretty good. I'm dropping knowledge. I feel like there's not any coverage of the college regional races. Is that because they are all this weekend?
Yeah, they haven't happened yet, but
They haven't happened yet. Okay. Grant Fisher lost a couple races. Is that a surprise, or is he just training through?
The guys who beat him are really good. He runs in a tough conference.
John said the guys who beat him are pretty good. Tough conference, training through.
Actually, the guy from Arizona State, right? Princeton grad, 5th year at Arizona State.
Wow, Chris, you're showing some knowledge here. You used to pretend like you didn't follow it anymore.
I read the front page of Let's Run every day. I think that's a story, right? I mean, there's been a lot of guys now that have really excelled in the 5th year. Are there as many people excelling from non-Ivy schools going somewhere else? Like, are there kids from Oregon that do a 5th year at LSU, or does that happen, or is it really more like an Ivy League phenomenon because there's no redshirt?
They would never go to another school. If you're at Oregon and you're doing well, you're just going to take your 5th year at Oregon. You're not going to go to freaking LSU.
Yeah, John said if you're at Oregon, you just stay at Oregon. You don't go to LSU. But maybe now with the transfer portal, more people, you'll see it. I mean, you've seen Sabrina Sutherland, she did it, but that was Georgetown, so that's kind of Ivy League light.
What do you think about this idea for
Redshirt.
All right, get rid of Chris.
Robert says, get rid of Chris. Chris, any final comments?
I think that is an underutilized tool, right? If your kid has the opportunity to go 4 years somewhere and do a 5th year somewhere else, like, what a cool life experience. All right, I'm out.
All right, thanks. Bye. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Special, totally random guest call from Running with the Buffaloes author, Chris Lear. Seriously, if you haven't not read Running the Buffaloes, you need to buy it. One of the best running books of all time.
Insider, I mean, people may not know Chris's whole story. He's my college roommate at Princeton. He's from New Jersey. His dad was a big Seton Hall fan, so that's why he knew Lyles' dad. Also, obviously, that's why he was mentioning William Polson, who was a Princeton runner, is now running at Arizona State in the Pac-12 champion in the 1500. Chris also was high school friends with Jason Vigilante, the Princeton distance coach. It's all about friends for Chris. But what was I going to ask? I started to ask a question, John, and then when I said to get Chris off, guess nobody remembers. So what were we talking about before we were receiving the unexpected call?
Who knows, Robert, what you're thinking about? But one other prominent name in Shanghai was Sydney McLaughlin, the Diamond League debut of her. Is that correct?
Yep.
Unlike Noah Lyles, she is not undefeated in the Diamond League, suffering a loss in the 400 meters. Respectable second place finish. Many people are banking on her to be, I don't know if it's fair to say, like the next Allison Felix in the sport, but she got a ton of money to turn pro from New Balance, known as a 400-meter hurdler, but for her to become a name, she's got to be running the relays, running on the 400. Second in the Diamond League, still pretty good. I mean, that'll put you in the USA relay team all the time. So any thoughts of Sydney's debut?
I thought it was really good. She ran 50.78, which her PR is 50.07. So it's not that close. But for her first opener, she's flying halfway around the world to China for this race. She only lost by 0.13 of a second to Salwa Eid Nasser, who is a 49 low woman. She was the second. She's the world championship silver medalist. She was really winning a lot of Diamond Leagues last year. Only Shaunae Miller-Uibo is really better at the 400 than Nasser is. So to run Nasser that close and to leave the rest of the field in the dust, I mean, third place was over half a second behind McLaughlin, and McLaughlin beat the U.S. champion Shaquem at Wembley by almost 2 seconds. Guy Wembley had a very poor race, running 52.69 for 8th. But, I think, you would, in an ideal world, you'd like the time to be a little faster, but the fact that she was so close to Nasser, I thought really good. And if McLaughlin, being that close to Nasser, you could be a medal threat. There's probably only one medal open in the 400 because Nasser and Miller-Uibo are so good, but I thought it was a really good run for Sydney.
It was interesting to me because when I saw the time, I'm like 50.65 won the race. Like, that's slow for the Diamond League. It's like, what I make of this? Like, the fact that she's so close to Nasser is a good sign, but the fact that I didn't think the time was that impressive. But then the post-race comments were interesting. I mean, McLaughlin's like, look, I'm happy. I ran close to my PR. I mean, she thought 0.7 was close to it. So it's her, basically her flat open 400 season opener. So the exact quote was, I felt good to run close to my PB. This is my first time in Shanghai and I like the city. But Eid Nasser was sort of not happy. She thought, I would say 50-50. Today was just okay because that's the slowest time. I mean, Nasser never runs that slow. I mean, she ran one race last year in Jordan in like 52 seconds that she won. But, one thing when I was doing the research for that race and writing the recap of it was we're sort of like in a really great era for women's 400. I mean, we have two really good runners. I mean, Nasser lost once all year. Miller-Uibo never loses, except she did lose at Worlds in 2017, but she was undefeated last year, I think, in everything, right? 200 and 400. Like, how good is she?
She's exceptional. But we talked about sprint doubles earlier, and Miller-Uibo, she ran the 200 and the 400 at Worlds in 2017. She didn't win either of them. And it's just hard you get in those championship environment, even for someone as good as Shaunae Miller-Uibo, it's not easy to pull off those races or those doubles. So I think, Miller-Uibo versus Nasser is going to be great theater again. And I also like how they're just totally, different from each other in terms of the way they're built. I mean, Shaunae Miller-Uibo is very tall. She's exactly what you would picture for sort of a sprinter. She just looks like she was born to run. And Salwa Eid Nasser is a lot shorter, and she sort of just zooms around the track like that. But I think it's great contrast in styles. It's really, or body types at least. It's very interesting to see those two square off. So that's going to be a good rivalry. And if we get Sydney, I don't think Sydney's going to be doing the 400 at Worlds or Olympics just yet. But this bodes well for her hurdles, which we're still waiting on her Diamond League debut in that event.
Well, I'd mention Allison Felix, and not that Allison Felix isn't a great athlete, but I think there aren't that many women athletes that you can promote as like big time face of American women's sports. We got the soccer players. Nobody pays attention to the WNBA. You got tennis. No one really pays attention to pro golf. So I think the 4x4 helps you just to rack up those gold medal counts, kind of like Allison Felix does on both relays for her. But looking at Shaunae Miller-Uibo's stats, I mean, she didn't really lose at all in 2017 either. Like, she lost 200 at pre, but I mean, she lost 100, which she never runs. But she was like basically had one loss the entire season, and she was third in the 200 and fourth in the 400. So kind of interesting on that front. But
well, her thing is her problem in those races in the Olympic final and in the 400 final at Worlds is she misjudged her effort. She would go out so hard that she was totally out of gas by the end. And remember her just staggering basically down the home straight in London in 2017. And then the Olympics, she fell at the line, not because she meant to really dive, but because she was just totally spent. So the way she runs the event, if she misjudges her pacing, it could be very interesting in the home straight.
Do y'all realize how fast she's run this year? Does anyone have any idea what she's done this year?
Shaunae Miller-Uibo?
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware she had been racing yet. I can't remember her results.
She has a result from Gainesville, Florida. Is this Florida Relays? Yeah. No, the Tom Jones Memorial Game. I don't know if it's Florida Relays or not. April 27th, 49.05 for 400.
Oh crap! Yeah, now I remember because Norman ran really fast, and then she ran really fast. Now I remember. Yeah, that's outstanding for some random, college meet in April.
She opened up 0.08 off of her PB. I think you'd want to go to Shanghai and just get 10 grand, but hey.
Yeah, but you got to think of it from her perspective. She basically any Diamond League she enters, there's either going to be a 200 or 400 most likely, and she can win either of those. So, sort of, she can pick and choose. You don't want to re-racing every single week.
But there's been so much sprint talk, and we don't talk about the distances. Anything else we need to say about the distances in Shanghai? Or what about Occidental? We had the USATF Distance Classic. Or the big news, folks, regarding the 2020 Olympic gold medalist in the women's marathon.
Let's talk Oxy a little bit. Unless you want to go, do you want to? Yeah,
I think we should do listener audio because it's related to Shanghai. If you wanted to watch the Shanghai meet, it was a little bit difficult. Obviously, it's on at a weird time, but if you want to watch pro track and field in America, your options, well, you also have to have USATF plus TV subscription, but mainly NBC Gold subscription. It's pay-per-view. Most of the meets, the Diamond League meets, are also on either the Olympic Channel or NBCSN, so regular cable for most people, for a lot of people at least. But this one wasn't on TV. The meet was Saturday morning in the U.S., and it wasn't on TV on the Olympic Channel until 8 p.m. on Sunday, up against Game of Thrones, which is kind of nuts. So, NBC soccer was over. There was no soccer in NBCSN this weekend. You had the debut of Lyles versus Coleman. This just shows how off the radar it is, because I feel like you could hype this up, talk about it. America's Sprint Stars, here they are. It would help build stuff for the Olympics next time around. But none of that was done. We got some listener audio here. This guy will get a free pair of Hoka One Carbon X shoes. The shoes are out. Hoka's been sponsoring our expiration of the Ultra Marathon all month, and we're giving away 10 pairs of shoes. They actually don't have to be pairs of Carbon X, because actually now the Carbon X is on back order till June 1st. But the listener audio, here it is. It's pretty long. We're going to do it in 2 segments.
Hey guys, Freddie here, longtime fan. You guys do have minority fans. Just want to let you guys know I'm a minority in every way. According to the boards, I don't make $200,000. I don't run sub 15. I don't have a model wife, and I'm not white.
There it is, proof right there. LetsRun.com, not a racist cesspool. I guess, unfortunately, not everyone makes $200,000 a year and has a hot wife. But any comments?
What are you talking about? I have like 3 wives. I make $1 million a year. I don't know about you guys.
He didn't say that his wife wasn't extremely attractive. He just said she wasn't a model. She probably is a PhD from Harvard and is a professor. I think we were misinterpreting what he said.
Okay, we'll continue on.
Anyway, big props with the podcast. It's a great new addition. We enjoy reading the page, but it's great to hear you guys talk and debate and stuff like that. Give us the news. So great addition. I think you guys should name it Let's Run Podcast. You guys already have a big recognizable name, so why not just name it Let's Run Podcast or something like that? Anyway, just wanted to say that lately I feel a little depressed that distance running is dying or is dead. In the past year on ESPN, I've seen bowling, I've seen drone racing, I've seen CrossFit. I even saw them showing gaming, like kids playing video games. I've seen them broadcast a cornhole tournament. Yes, cornhole. Yeah, I can't find a Diamond League track meet. I can't find when the big marathon's happening. I usually have to go to the boards, find some obscure link in Russia or something, and you guys, give me the link. But yeah, that's pretty sad that you have to do that to, find a great race or something.
I mean, he's got a good point, but as we said, it's on NBC Gold. But if you're looking for ESPN for track, it's not on there. NBC is the broadcast network of the Olympics and most of the Diamond League on NBCSN or the Olympic Channel. So right now, I guess ESPN has NCAA track and field.
And ESPN Plus, folks, has the Ivy League Network with yours truly. Please don't bash my employer, Weldon. Although I think actually the Ivy League pays my lucrative salary.
Yeah, but I think he has a larger point here, and just people want to be able to find these meets and watch them live. And Sydney McLaughlin last week, they had that interview with her, and there's a few questions with her on her Twitter feed, and the person doing the interview asked her, "So where can we watch you compete in Shanghai?" And she said, basically said, "I don't know. I will post on my Instagram later and let you guys know." And it's fair because, one, Sydney's this 19-year-old woman who doesn't know how to watch the Diamond League. I think that's sort of an indictment of just people her age probably just don't know how to watch this thing. And two, she couldn't say a television network because it wasn't on TV. You had to watch it with this $75 NBC Gold subscription.
And three, I think it shows you that she's never watched a Diamond League meet on herself on TV.
Right. And she's someone with an interest in, not every track athlete is a diehard track nerd, but she's someone who's interested in track and field at the very least, and she's never been compelled to watch a meet.
But guys, real quick, John, while we're talking about broadcasting and networks, we ended last week's podcast, before we had the bonus Jim Walmsley podcast. By the way, great interview, Weldon. I enjoyed it. But we ended last week's podcast with my play-by-play 4x4 announcing, and John was giving me a hard time saying, at the end of last week's podcast, but then I got a text a few hours later. He listened to the audio. John, do you have an apology? It was really good, right?
I give Robert credit. I forgot how good him and Bill Spaulding were on the call, and the excitement level brought me back to watching the video of that race of Gabby Thomas's amazing ankle leg in the 4x4 at Haps last year in Philly. So I'll give credit to Robert. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a cool way to end the podcast. I don't think we need to make a habit out of ending the podcast with Robert's calls, but I greatly enjoyed it, and it was a really good call of the race.
Maybe Spaulding and Robert should do a highlight show at NBCSN on the Diamond League.
We should. We can replace Mosback. Mosback, you're a Princeton guy. You've had your time in the shame. I'm coming for you, Craig. I'm going to take your job. I have no conflict of interest with Nike.
Problem is, Robert lives in Baltimore. I'm much closer to the NBCSN studios. I'm with her in Stanford.
Yeah.
And then, John, I could probably parlay that into getting on the soccer coverage as well. I mean, what would you do, John, if I became the studio guy for soccer and track and field in America?
Oh, that'd be bad. You would have you and Rebecca Lowe, two Palace fans on the Crystal Palace fans on the soccer table. That's too many, in my opinion. Even though Rebecca Lowe does a great job, but no. Here's my other thing about Diamond League: for races like Sydney and Noah Lyles, the sprints, people can just watch this stuff on Twitter. The races are not even a minute long for anything. Any race below 800 meters is not even a minute long. It's very easy to follow the sport by just seeing sort of a video clip like Lyles and Coleman. All you need to do, find this thing on Instagram or Twitter or something like that. And I would hope that the sport would be able to leverage that a little bit into popularity. If we just, hey, did you guys see the Lyles Coleman race? Oh no, take 10 seconds to watch it. Here's what happened. And you can sort of get people interested that way. I feel like there might be an opportunity there for people to promote it. If you get some, you need some people with big time follower numbers, but if you get someone that was those celebrity fans tweeting it out and saying like, hey, look at these races, it's an opportunity.
I mean, that's true, but also you can watch anything online now, right? Like you can watch a clip of the Kentucky Derby. It doesn't mean you become a fan of horse racing after that. So I think we do need to build storylines. There needs to be some sort of, I don't know what the term is even, bumper programming with highlights and highlight shows and that sort of stuff. If we just kind of prop it up on NBC Gold and for the hardcore, like, okay, where do we go from there?
I just don't understand what the people like USATF do all day. Like, shouldn't they make it? Like, we have our own podcast. Could we make, if I had resources, could we make a TV show?
I don't know. When I used to follow poker, there's some pretty good poker video podcasts made by a couple guys, kind of like a PTI type thing. Maybe we should try to copy it, Robert. Any Let's Runners out there want to help us? Email us. Anyway, the listener audio is not done. This guy's got some tips, some more stuff. You don't just win the shoes for coming on, and we need minority viewership, so that was good. He was checking some boxes for us and knowing some inside jokes, that sort of stuff. But just bitching about TV? No, that's not it. We've got more here. Here it is.
Lastly, I love the idea about the hot takes. I think ESPN and those kind of places do a great job of like LeBron versus MJ. You know, you guys can have Rep versus Frank Shorter, and you guys take different sides and, you know, debate or whatever. I think that'd be cool. We kind of like the behind the scenes. We need more of John's love life. Yes, we need to know more about John's love life. Let's have that segment.
Did you guys hear that?
No, audio cut out. Couldn't hear what he was saying.
But how do we talk about that? Can we talk about the lack thereof? Or
Robert, don't get yourself fired. Be careful what you say here. What comes out of your mouth. Just try to be professional.
yeah, I'm glad that the listener wants to talk about John's love life, because I noticed this when I was single. The married guys want to talk about single guys' love lives. They think it's so exciting to be single and out in the field of the battlefield, as they like to say. But I was going to say that John was not working this week, and he was at a bachelor party, folks. He was not at his own bachelor party. So, ladies, he still is available. It's hard to believe that somebody with a master's degree, smart, witty, athletic as John could still be out there, but it is. So if you're lonely at home, don't give up hope. John's still available to people.
All right, we got a little more. I assume John's not going to comment on that.
Wife audio, yeah, we need the wife audio. That's also pretty cool. Take a page out of the Ringer, like, you know, Bill's podcast from the Ringer. They'll play like he'll talk to his daughter. Like the behind the scenes kind of stuff. So just my 2 cents. Keep it up. Love the website. Thanks for all the content. Bye.
There we go. Listener audio of the week. Winner of a free Hoka Project Carbon X shoes.
You suck up to us, we give you free gear.
Yes. If you'd like to submit audio, you can call 1-844-LETS-RUN.
I wish I could share John's face. Again, we can see John's face right now. Picture's worth 1,000 words. He's turning red.
I think bemused is the expression. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't call it red, but what do you want me to tell you about my love life? There's, it's not much going on at the moment, I'm afraid. And it's like, if there's an update to share, I'll share it. But this is a track and field podcast, guys.
Maybe we'll just share about your life. John was a winner this weekend in Atlantic City. I'll just leave it at that. Nothing big from what I understand, but a little sports betting. Yeah.
Yeah. Craps, blackjack, played, had some good times.
But the listener wants more stuff. So, hot take: Galen Rupp versus Frank Shorter in the marathon. John, go.
No, I like that. Here's the hot take, because we haven't had our Alberto Salazar segment, and we need to talk about Gwen Jorgensen, folks. I kind of made a joke about it earlier, but she has had the same surgery as Galen Rupp, Achilles surgery.
No, well, let's correct that. It's not the exact same surgery, because with Rupp's surgery, they disattached and then reattached the Achilles tendon. With Gwen's surgery, it was the same issue, Haglund's deformity, sort of this bony growth on the heel, but they left the Achilles tendon alone, is what she said in her video, which is very funny at the end. If you should watch it, they had a clip of her zonked out on medication after her surgery. She was just saying some funny things. So definitely worth the watch there on her YouTube channel. But yeah, it's a different surgery, but still she's going to be on the shelf for a while. Said probably won't be back to full training in 3 or 4 months. I mean, has this extinguished the flame on her gold medal dreams in Tokyo next year?
I think they already were extinguished, but making the team seems almost impossible to me now. I kind of wondered what she'd been up to, because we hadn't seen anything. She didn't do a spring marathon, so she was battling injury. This explains a lot, but it just shows also how little time she had really to do this, and sort of everyone assumes like, oh, she's so good, she'll get a marathon in, she'll get another one in, she'll keep improving, she'll have a shot at making the team. One, some of that may have been fantasy to begin with. You just don't know if she's going to go from being like say she was like about a 230 equivalent to, where you can go from there when you dedicate yourself to running full time. But yeah, you throw in an injury or two and it's almost impossible, especially making the U.S. Women's Olympic Marathon team, which is very hard.
I hope that she's back in the trials. She's still someone that I'm very interested in seeing running. I think that the gold medal goal was a pipe dream to begin with, but maybe 2024.
Do you guys think this gives her an out in some ways? Like, oh, I didn't make it, but I got injured. In some ways, like, lets her save a little face, and then she can focus on 2024?
I guess. I mean, I was one of the people who said when she turned to the marathon, she had a 0% chance of winning the gold in Tokyo. And yeah, I never thought her chances were good. But I think if she was only moving to the marathon with the goal of winning the Olympic gold marathon, if Olympic gold, if that was the only thing that was driving her decision to move to the marathon, it was a bad decision. But I don't think that's the case. I think she's always said running was her favorite. Triathlon was okay because she was, the best at it and she was an Olympic gold medalist, but running was her real love. And so she's doing something that she loves. And yeah, running injuries are a part of running, but I think, and she had a rough marathon in Chicago, but if she can get healthy and really get back to loving the sport and enjoying it, then this is still going to be a positive thing for her. I just think if you're saying the only way her transition to the marathon is going to be a success is if she, makes the team or gets an Olympic medal, I think that's not how I would judge it. I would judge it more from a personal satisfaction, and then hopefully she eventually gets competitive in the event.
Yeah, good points, John. I mean, if we're talking about the hot take, somebody in the message board was like, how many people has Jerry Schumacher ruined? So I think the hot debate should be, who's ruined more talent, Jerry Schumacher or Alberto Salazar? And I'm kidding when I ask that question. We're not going to discuss that because I'm like, we're going to blame Jerry Schumacher for this? That's ridiculous. This woman had 18 months to try to make the Olympic team. Of course, she's got to ramp the mileage up, and that might lead to injury. But if she sounds like this might have been a problem, Galen Rupp had the same issue. So, when someone gets injured, you don't just blame the coach. This is absurd. When you have high profile athletes, you're going to have some high profile bombs. Mary Kane, Franklin Sanchez for Alberto. I don't know who are the high profile bombs for Jerry then. Who are all the people getting injured? Solinsky, yes, didn't he trip on his dog? Tore his hamstring off his bone or something? Who else?
Well, the entire team right now seems to be off the shelf a little bit, I would say.
I guess Derek's had some Achilles issues.
Well, Shalane just had surgery. Jager and Centrowitz haven't competed this season.
Oh, right.
Emily Infeld's been injury prone her entire career, but you've got to think about
the whole team's injured. How am I that bad? Fire Jerry. Nike, Capriati, fire him.
But there's some nuance here though. Infeld has been injury prone her entire career. I think that's just how she is. And I think they've done a good job of making sure that she's ready when it counts. She medaled at the World Championship. She made the Olympics. She ran well in London 2017. And then Shalane has been pretty healthy basically her entire career. She's an older runner now, and sometimes you get injuries after being in the sport at such a high level that she was for such a long time. So I don't think I don't think you can fault Jerry for that either. Now, maybe some of the other athletes, I don't know, but I'm not going to speculate about, I don't know exactly how they're pushing and how much this is all related. So I'm not going to really speculate about that stuff, but it's interesting. I'm interested to see when some of these guys are going to come back. Jager and Centrowitz, we haven't heard anything about these guys. Are they going to be racing anytime soon? What's up with them? I think it would be interesting to know. Maybe I need to start asking some questions and doing my journalistic job to figure that stuff out.
Yes, John, do your job. Thank you. We still got over 2 months to USA's, but now it's not that far off anymore, right? Worlds is a long way off, but USA's, once you start getting into that 10-week window, you better start getting ready. You can't be doing nothing now. So
yeah, no, this is about the time of year people are going to be opening up. If you were running USA's in a normal year, they're in the end of June, you would usually be debuting around May 1st or so. And so now they're at the end of July, you'd be debuting around June 1st. Well, June 1st is only a week and a half away. So most of the people you would think if they're healthy, they would race by, the first week of June or so.
Well, Robert talked about firing Nike. So should we turn to the Alysia Montaño op-ed in the New York Times? Essentially, she wanted to fire Nike, or Nike fired her, and it's gotten a lot of discussion, and Nike sort of changed the policy, or said it had previously changed the policy because of it. But I'll look at the exact title of the op-ed. But essentially it was... Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, they did a video too. So I think they did. It just depends on which way you first read it. They produced a really good video. I actually thought it was like a Nike ad. It was so well produced. It's like 5 minutes of Montaño talking about going for your dreams, and then, the actual op-ed was more about like how Nike says, dare to be great, just do it. Alysia Montaño's point was accepting unless you want to get pregnant. So her complaint was, as a Nike athlete, if you're a woman and you got pregnant, what happened was they didn't actually fire you, which was kind of the way it's been interpreted. They would pause your contract while you were pregnant and not pay you. And then when you came back to where you were, but there's a lot of pressure to get back because if you don't keep your world ranking up, you can get reduced really quickly. The thing was very powerful. I mean, my wife, other people rewrote it, even if you don't have a New York Times subscription, like Yahoo and all these other people wrote it. I mean, my wife was like, did you hear about this thing with Montaño and the pregnancy? She's like, my favorite shoes are Nikes, but I'm not going to buy Nike next time I go out and buy a pair of running shoes. My wife's not a big runner, but it really struck her. I mean, she really, it's really hard to be a working mom, and paid maternity leave is something that's really sort of crucial for people. Anyways, so there's a lot of, I think that she got a lot of traction on this, and for, a good reason, obviously. And I, as someone who's a new father, I think about it differently than I would have maybe 5 years ago. There's been some message boards. A few people on the message board are like, well, why would you sign this contract? And
Well, you don't have an option, right? I mean, that's how the contracts were. I think as an athlete, as a woman, she did the right thing. How do you get a company to change its ways? In today's age, you bring a lot of social media pressure. You expose what they're doing. And Nike does a lot to say that they're marketing to women and presenting this women-friendly image. And they had some, they got rid of some executives who weren't behaving properly a couple years ago, some men, and that was related to women. So if they're this woman-friendly brand and you're like, hey, I get pregnant, and I think, then the question was, how was it portrayed? My contract gets put on pause, whatever. If people don't like that, then Nike needs to change its ways. But then it becomes sort of a more nuanced discussion, right? Like, only 4 states in America have paid maternity leave. A lot of companies do, but Nike's a big company. And then they're like, well, these are independent contractors. And then people are like, well, they should be treated like employees. They should get it. And then others are like, well, if you get pregnant, you don't get no one gets paid maternity. You get maternity leave once you have the baby, maybe right before the baby, then a couple months after, a few months after. So as an athlete, you get a full paid pregnancy off and then recovery after that. Where does that stop? That's going to cause these companies to stop signing women who might get pregnant or a small contract. So there's all these unintended consequences that might come up as a result of a new policy. But I think as a society, I think the reception was, for most people, was pretty positive. It's like, hey, somebody gets pregnant, and you're Nike, a big company, you need to treat them well. And women shouldn't be treated differently than men. But having said that, right, let's say you're pregnant and you missed the New York City Marathon one year. They're not going to give you an appearance fee because you didn't run it. So it's not equal, right? Like a woman who has a baby, especially as an athlete woman who misses events and that sort of stuff, and runners are independent contractors, and you're going to miss events that you can't run and make money at, they're not going to pay you because you didn't make it. Like, you get paid to show up and run, that sort of stuff. So it's just one of those things. It's unfair. And if the shoe companies which provide the bulk of the salary for the stars, at least, if they start treating the women better, I think real quickly Montaño got results. So good for her.
Yeah, the comments I made on the message board, someone said, why would she sign this contract? You didn't have to sign the contract. If it wasn't, then, whatever. And I just said, I posts like this are stupid. We as a society should be fighting for paid maternity leave for women. And so, then someone responded to that and said, I'm with Montaño, or earlier had said, I'm with Montaño, and any reasonable person should be. People sign bad contracts all the time, particularly if 1 or 2 companies are the only opportunities available for you. Thanks to more companies offering sponsorships, Nike now has to improve the terms they are putting in their contracts. Montaño and many other athletes have to put off pregnancy if they want to be competitive, which is an understandable choice and sacrifice. But if a company who cares about its employees should not demonize something like childbearing. So I really agree with that. First of all, you get in the legal ass. She's not an employee of Nike. She's a contractor. And also, I think Nike's getting a bad rap here because Nike basically was with Adidas for part of this, and she mentioned Adidas
Asics.
briefly Asics, and they basically had this. I think the same. I think it was pretty standard across the industry. So Nike gets more publicity, sort of the leader of the sports thing. But it is nuanced. I mean, I think that, people are like, what happens if someone gets pregnant and has 6 kids? I just don't think that's realistic to ask that question. There was one part of the video that I didn't really, I don't know. Again, I'm all for Montaño. I'm all for the leave. I want to start with that. But there was one part of the video that I didn't love. And she said, the exact quote was, I don't know if you want to play the audio well done or not, but the exact quote is, the sports companies allow for men to have a full career. And when a woman decides to have a baby, it pushes women out at the prime. The sports companies. And I'm like, I don't know. To me, that was like a little misleading. Like the reality is, and I don't know, I only have a son, but if I have a daughter, but I think all children can learn this. In reality, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You can't have it all. There's only so much time in the day. So it's really hard to have an amazing hobby and to have an amazing job and to be an amazing family person. Like, normally people specialize in certain areas. It's very hard to have, like they say as a college track coach, it's really hard for an athlete to be great at school, be great at social life, and be great at academics. Well, the same thing true is in the real world. It's hard to be great at everything. And I don't know how you're pushed as a professional women's track athlete, a professional athlete, period. You have a very narrow window between 20 and 40 is when you're going to be an exceptional athlete. So if you have a baby as a woman, that's going to take part of your career. You can't get around that unless you have a surrogate give birth for you. There's no way of getting around that fact. So I don't know. I think if I had a daughter, I'd be like, you have to think about these things. You have a body and it's only going to be able to produce babies for a certain period of time. If you want to have those babies yourself, now surrogacy is a different thing, obviously, but that was the only quibble I had with it. I mean, I do think that, you're not pushed out of your prime. You chose to have the baby in your prime. It's just whether you're getting paid during that thing. I think the solution is still pay them your contract through the pregnancy. And then if they come back and need a new contract, well, then you guys can negotiate that.
Yeah, well, Stephanie Bruce, was on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and she had her first kid, and then the second one was a surprise. And pretty much every kid you have, even if you recover quickly, right? Like the quickest recovery ever would be like 1 year off. As a woman athlete, let's say you have 15 years in your prime, each kid, 1 year is gone. So hopefully your company can keep paying you and sponsoring you, but like the performances you would have achieved, all the prize money you would have won, all the things you would have done, all the Wimbledons you would have won, the US Opens, that sort of stuff, that thing is gone. Serena Williams has come back, but there's a couple of majors that she just wasn't at because she was having a baby. So there's going to be sacrifice. It's not fair. Men don't have to do that. Men just keep winning majors. You're Roger Federer. You win one, you win the next one. You don't have to miss any unless you get injured.
Right. Women have these amazing bodies that are able to produce babies and don't. But right, it's not fair. It's not the same, and there's no way of getting around that. And I think that gets to some of this. I don't know. Like we need to acknowledge that there is a difference between a man's and woman's body, and have different things. I think some of this honestly gets into the whole castrous dominion debate, like in the transgender debate. Like if we don't acknowledge that there's differences here, I don't know. Like we want to treat everyone have the same opportunity, and that's why I think that we do need, paid maternity leave. I think that would be beneficial for society, but I can understand why some people, I don't know, it bothers them, I guess, but I don't think that it should.
All right, guys, we promised Iowa High School track and field talk. It is time for Iowa High School track and field talk. We're talking the boys 1A 3,200 meter run at the Iowa State meet. And what happened here, if you didn't hear about it, they rang the bell a lap early. They rang it after 6 laps instead of 7. And that meant that most of the runners finished running after 7 laps instead of 8. But there were some runners who ran the entire distance. And Joe Anderson of George Little Rock was the first person across the line after 3,200 meters. He ran 9:56. But after an official review, the state title was awarded to Will Roda of Lamar's Gellin because he was the person who crossed the finish line first after 7 laps. And really, I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous situation that they would award the winner of the gold medal, the state championship, to a guy who only ran 2,800 meters when they're handing it out for 3,200 meters. And eventually, we've had this decision. Finally, sanity has prevailed. They've reversed this decision, or they've at least decided they've named co-champions. So Rhoda, who they named who was the first guy across the line after 7 laps, they've said he can keep his state title, but we're also awarding Anderson, who was the man who finished up first after 8 laps. He's going to be the co-champion, and now the orders are reflecting the order of finish after 8 laps. I mean, to me, this is a whole lot of hullabaloo for what I think should be a simple option here. Yes, the guy rang the bell a lap early. That's bad, but everyone knows you have to finish 8 laps. If the kids were finishing with like 8 minutes something on the clock, you should know that's too fast. It should go by order of finish after 8 laps, and I think it's ridiculous that we were awarding the 7-lap guy the championship.
John, this is a tough one for me. I agree with you. I got that thread hot because I changed the title to make it. I thought the guy who finished 8 laps should have been the champion. If you're only going to have one champion, it should have been him. But this is a really tough situation because not only did they ring the bell wrong, but the announcer, who was actually, I think his name's Mike J, but last name definitely J. He does all these meets all over the country. He's one of the best announcers in the country. He was really hyping up, like, this is the last lap, go for it. So you hear that. I mean, maybe you're a runner and you think, maybe I got the laps wrong. They rang the bell. The announcer's going crazy. So you put the athletes in a tough spot. Now, the guy who won after 8 laps, he said, I knew that they rang the bell early, and I saw the other guys kicking in. I stayed close to them, and then they stopped, and I kept going. So he did it right. He knew that there was 8 laps, and he won. I think some of the other runners did finish at 7 laps and then eventually kept going. And the reason why they handed it is they said most runners they thought kicked it in. So I'm just like, no, the guy that knew it was 8 laps should win. But if you look at the rule book, I think that the solution is supposed to rerun the race. And someone said that, the only solution maybe moving forward would be like, we need to have a set rule. Like, if the bell rings, that's it. 1 lap to go.
Ooh, I don't know about that. I mean, it's not going to happen very often. I don't mind the co-champions thing. I think saying he can keep his state title. And this is a unique situation. I don't totally mind that. And actually, he had a statement. Anderson, who was the guy who finished 8 laps, and he said he was the guy who finished first after 8 laps. He said, being stripped of my first ever state title hurts a lot, but my identity does not come from the trophies that I have won or the ones that have been taken away. It comes from who I am in Christ. I ran the absolute hardest I could. I'm proud of that race. At the end of the day, it's not about how we respond when life goes great. It's about how we respond when bad things happen to us. Congrats to Will. He ran a great race. Now, that statement probably came directly after the race. I think it's pretty classy for a guy who actually
very classy. I would have been irate.
Yeah. But I'm glad to see that now he's actually got the recognition and the state title that he deserves.
What do you guys think? Should we sponsor a Let's Run? We fly to Iowa. These guys aren't doing postseason meets. We could hold like another meet. Get everyone there together.
Do it during USA's. The grudge match. Iowa State Class 1A re-race.
Pay-per-view.
What are their names again?
Joe Anderson was the guy who was one after he was first place after 3,200 meters, and Will Roda was the guy who was first after 2,800 meters.
We're supposed to do more hot takes. 1-844, let's run. Anderson or Roder? Who you got? Yeah, I thought the Anderson kid was amazingly classy. What a statement. I mean, at that age, just say like, hey man, like this isn't who I am. He's a religious guy. His being comes from Christ, but he's like grounded in something bigger than running. Whereas so many distance runners, oh my gosh, like their whole identity is tied up to how they do in a race, and just in general, like I don't know, it shows great perspective by this kid to realize that there's a lot more out there.
We need to shut this podcast down. I think Walden's going to have an interview with Ben Rosario coming up, but one final thought: which would get a higher? Bring in more revenue. You think this pay-per-view from the high school rematch?
Whatever the second option is, that's going to be it.
Well, I was going to set up we talked about how I had to talk about how the raccoon has been caught. At least one has been caught. But I don't want to seal off the porch. So talking to the experts and reading LetsRun, people say you got to prevent them from going back underneath your porch. But I don't want to seal off the porch. Like if they're down there right now, like they'll be stuck. So I was thinking of setting up like a night camera, like a Wyze camera. They're amazing, WYZE, and getting an extension cord. It's got night vision. I could just there's 2 poles underneath my porch. If I set it up tonight, wouldn't that be like a live pay-per-view? And then if the raccoon comes out, I know he's in there and I don't want to seal it. But if he doesn't come out, I know no one's in there and I can seal it up and be riveting.
I take it back. Live pay-per-view footage of the exterior of Robert's house. I couldn't imagine something less interesting. Why would anyone pay for that?
Johnny, riveting. You never know what's going to happen.
I don't really mean pay. Like, what if it was just a free stream? People might just be looking.
You're cultivating stalkers here, Rob.
It would be better with no archive. Like if there was no archive and it was just a free stream, so you couldn't miss it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you archive, you can go back and everything happens. But no, it's only live.
In Norway, people watch for hours. Like,
yes,
they put a camera on a train and it just drives around and people watch it, or like they watch it.
Millions of people watch it.
So this could be the next big thing. We didn't do deleted thread of the week, Robert, but there is a deleted thread on there. Rojo, please help, wildlife emergency. So there's a market for this. And Malmo, please stop deleting this stuff. These are good threads.
I was offered a job by the pest control company. The guy could not trap the raccoon. By the way, I've learned there might have been some violations of state law. I do have a permit. It's 9267, Maryland permit 9267 to have a trap for a raccoon. It is illegal to relocate a trapped animal. It's a federal law. They're trying to prevent rabies. I don't think that's going to really happen. They're going to eradicate rabies.
So what happened to him?
So I hope that the pest control guy doesn't get arrested because of my podcast.
Robert, this guy has a duck nest in his front yard. 12 eggs were in it. The mother duck was sitting on it. Now there are 9 eggs and the mother is gone. What do I do? Is the mother gone forever? Did the owls I heard the other night kill it? Should I hire someone to sit on the nest? How do I save the other 9 ducks?
This was an amazing thread, and this should have been kept up.
I know. It's
now that it's probably too late.
Now the ducks are dead. Thank you, Malmo. The ducks are dead. Other deleted threads. For 15 years, LetsRun has been the only staple in my life. We could help this guy out. Deleted for no reason. There's just a lot of stuff out here. Obviously there's some spam posts, but some of these.
My vow for the next week is to improve the moderation. I've been trying to meet with the guy who runs the Orioles website. I said for over a year I'll be going to meet. Actually, for like 3 years I'd meet him. He moderates his Orioles forum very well, but I've never met with him. So that, John, please ask me next week if I set up a meeting with this guy.
All right, we will do. So I think that does it. Stay tuned. We may have a podcast with Ben Rosario, coach of the Hoka NAZ Elite. His runners are firing on all cylinders right now. Men, women. Hey, we mentioned Stephanie Bruce earlier. Did you guys see that? Like a nearly 30-second 5K PR? You come on this.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Oxy, but yeah, she ran very well there.
Quick, 30-second Oxy rundown.
Larry Lalang, is he back? Yes or no? I say no, but it was a good run for him. He won the 5K easily in about 13:25. He's
not back now, but he will be back, folks. He will be back. That's my take there. I think you should drop the Rosario thing as a separate podcast. I think it's too much all in one podcast.
All right. If you don't hear Ben Rosario after this, I'll be talking to him later today. He'll be coming up in his own separate podcast. You never know. It's like a bonus thing, right? I mean, we did the Jim Walmsley separate. That thing's killing it. So until the Ben Rosario podcast comes out, this is Weldon Johnson signing off for Robert and Jonathan Galt. Thanks, guys. All right. I've got the pleasure to be joined by one of the hottest coaches in America right now, Ben Rosario, the coach of the Hoka One NAZ Elite. Ben's team is pretty much on fire this spring. I may get these out of order, but first we had Scott Fauble run 2:09 at the Boston Marathon. Then we had, I think Kellen Taylor run 2:26 at the Prague Marathon. And actually, these are out of order, aren't they?
Alafine first.
Alafine run 2:26 PR at the Rotterdam Marathon. Then Kellen run 2:26 at the Prague Marathon.
No, Alafine, then Fauble, then Kellen.
Wow. See, it's just too much. I mean, most recently, Stephanie Bruce win the national title in Pittsburgh in the half marathon. And then last weekend, she drops down and sets a 5K PR. Club record, right? You keep track of these.
That's right.
15-17. So, Ben, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me, and congrats and everything.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to talk about it all.
Yeah, do you just have to keep like a spreadsheet of all the success you're having? I'm impressed it's still in your head, though.
Yeah, of course we keep track of everything, and it does just seem like everybody keeps one-upping each other, but that's good. That's part of the culture, and that's how it's been for a long time, and we do just seem to keep improving.
Yeah, I talked to Stephanie a couple weeks ago. She was on the podcast, and I got the impression that it is a true team. Like there's a good environment, even like men's and women's. It's not like the men are doing their own thing separate from the women. Everybody seemed to be very supportive and feeding off one another.
Yeah, it's really good right now. The culture is really, really good. We had a meeting in, I guess it was March, that lasted about 6 hours, and all we did was go over our culture and who we are and why we do what we do and why we believe in it and who works for us and who doesn't. And it was really very healthy, and we ended up creating about a 10-page culture deck based off of that meeting. And I just feel like everybody is really bought in, and that's what it takes.
Oh, wow. What do you mean who works for us and who doesn't? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think one of the things that came out of the meeting that was very freeing was that, look, we're not for everybody, and that's totally okay. If somebody doesn't work here, that doesn't mean they're a bad person or a bad athlete. It just means they don't work in our system, and vice versa. It doesn't mean that our system is bad or I'm a bad coach or these folks are bad teammates. It's just the chemistry has to be right, and it's like any sport, right? Look at the Celtics. Look how terrible they were this year with Kyrie. Kyrie just wasn't a fit, and so Kyrie Irving. So it destroyed the whole culture there, and he needs to move on, and they'll be good again when he's gone, and I'm sure he'll be good again somewhere else. It just wasn't a fit, and so that's why in the vetting process now it's so important to make sure that the person is going to really thrive in our system, because the culture and the belief and what you talked about, just sort of the vibe, is so vital to our success. So I guess that's what I mean.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, and like Brad Stevens he was regarded as like, the wonder kid coach.
Yeah.
And just because one year he doesn't do well doesn't mean he's a bad coach, and he'll probably think twice about who comes on the team next time or not.
Yeah, I mean, Popovich is a great coach, but Kawhi Leonard didn't work there. So what? It just wasn't a fit. You move on and you find the right fit. The turnover in all sports is a constant process of like trying to get it right. And I'm a big St. Louis Blues fan. They just made the Stanley Cup Finals. They were last in the league in January, but they had made a coaching change in November, and eventually that coaching change worked, and everybody gelled, and now they're in the finals. So it's just, culture is very, very important.
Do you study non-running coaches?
Yes, probably more so than running coaches. Yeah, for sure. I'm a big sports fan.
All right, good. I mean, I'm impressed with coaches who get outside of the running bubble, because I think it's very easy to put too much emphasis on the workouts and whatnot. I mean, obviously they're important, but we're not machines. There's a whole mental side. You got to motivate people. There's a lot more than just go run a quarter at 72 seconds.
Oh, 100%. I'm probably less of a running nerd now than I ever have been, honestly. I just think that you can get overloaded with all that stuff. Of course, if somebody's doing really well, if a group's doing really well, you want to kind of try to see what they're doing and see if you can take anything from it. But if you read every single article and listen to every single podcast and read every single book, it's just sensory overload, and it can cloud your judgment. You want to be able to make sound, clear decisions about your group.
Maybe let's start kind of with the culture thing that you were talking about. Maybe when the team first started, you just took whoever came to you. But now, can you be more particular in who you take? Does it work both ways? Like you're recruiting, and then at the same time, some athletes are reaching out to you. And I guess there are athletes who haven't worked out, and I don't even know who those are, because I think from afar, the media, we just focus on the success. But maybe it's sort of that process. What do you think makes a successful athlete in your program?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix of us reaching out to people and people reaching out to us. I think, physiologically they have to be a fit because we're not trying to have 13 people. Right now we have 13 on the roster. We're not trying to have 13 people doing 13 different things. We need people that respond to aerobic-based training. They need to enjoy and thrive off of tempo runs and long runs and, lactate threshold work, things like that. If somebody were the type that, they responded to lots of track work and 200s and 400s, that's just not what we do. And so that wouldn't be a good fit. We really believe in the team aspect. We meet every day. We believe in the camaraderie of everything. So if you're not a person that likes to get up every single morning and run at the same time and the structure of that, then you're probably not going to be a good fit. We really like to compete. We like to race. We like to get in a variety of races, like, Steph running the half marathon and the 5,000 and cross country all this spring. We're not as focused on time. We really have found over the years kind of organically that we're best suited for, the Bostons and the New Yorks and those kind of things where we can really compete. So if that's not really appealing to you, then you're probably not a good fit. And of course you have to be willing to move here and be in Flagstaff, which is also a big commitment. And so if you're the type that likes to be more of a nomad and bounce around, that's also not a part of what we do. So, those are sort of some of the basics.
I agree with everything except for that last one.
What do you mean?
Flagstaff's amazing. So it's no burden on anyone to have to move to Flagstaff.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not. That's our easiest selling point, obviously. Coming to Flagstaff is not a hard selling point.
If someone doesn't want to move to Flag, they shouldn't be in your program. They won't be any good. So Everything else sounded great. Yeah, and maybe what are the goals for the program? And maybe that sounds simplistic, but it sounds like you've thought about the culture and you came up with this, this, I don't know, is it a PowerPoint or this 10-page thing, this document? Do you guys, is the goal start, hey, we want to make Olympic teams, or like, how do you even define that? Because it sounds like you've thought about this culture thing a lot more than some other coaches. Well,
that is interesting. That was actually a big part of the meeting, and a big part of what we kind of concluded was that actually we just want to get better. I think early on we made the mistake of setting these goals that were very tangible. And, the thing about it is these people don't need a rah-rah speech. They don't need, they all have these internal goals anyway. That's why they're doing this, I think, especially with the level we're at now and the level of athlete that we have on the team, if we just focus on getting better, all those things, all those extrinsic things that you think about, making Olympic teams, winning national titles, setting these big PRs, those are all going to happen as a byproduct of just getting better. So we're just mostly trying to focus one day at a time, 1 week at a time, on getting better each and every day, each and every week, each and every segment, and letting those other things that people can get caught up in sometimes just happen as a byproduct. Whether it's Fauble running 209, which he and I never even talked about in the whole segment ever, or whether it's Steph running 15:17, which in that race we said, we're not going to look at the splits. We're not going to listen to the splits. All I'm going to do is stand here and tell you where you're at and, whether you're in a good spot or not. And we'll just see what the time is afterwards. So I think over the years, we found that the goal just is about the goal is just getting better individually and collectively.
And you said there's 13 athletes now?
There is.
As a coach, is it hard to sort of manage all these athletes? I mean, each one may have different goals. And I mean, look at Stephanie Bruce. She ran a half marathon, and then 2 weeks later, this 5K, and then she's going to run the Boulder this next weekend. I mean, some of that stuff is, I'm sure, coming from her, but like some of that maybe is by design by you. Like, how do you manage, I don't know, all the athletes? And I'm sure you, as a coach, you have your goals for them, and then each runner has their goals. Is that a hard thing? And then you have the team unit as well to think about. Is it hard to manage all that?
Yeah, it's hard, but I mean, that's the job, I don't mind that it's hard. It's emotionally draining at times because, like Kellen ran one marathon this spring. Alafine ran one marathon. Scott ran one marathon. But I feel like I ran all three, from an emotional standpoint. So it's draining, but no, it's great. I mean, it's the best. I told somebody the other day that at the end of that 6 years when I was I know this hasn't been recorded yet, but at the end of the 6 years, I used to own Big River Running Company, a running store in St. Louis, and I was very burnt out and fried at the end of 6 years. Now I'm 6 years into this, and I'm not fried at all because it's constantly a new challenge. Like each athlete and each segment provides a new challenge for me, and that's exciting, and that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. We talked before we started about your journey to getting where you are now, and it's a pretty cool one. And I mean, you've been through a lot in the running world, and I think we think of athletes sort of burning out, but we don't think of coaches and other people in the sport burning out. But I feel like there's a story that a lot of people can learn from there. Yeah. So, all right, this spring, I asked you this beforehand, but now I'm going to put you on the spot on the air. Like, is there a standout performance? How do you, I don't know, what's impressed you the most, or you're going to give me like, oh, they're all good performances?
Well, I don't mind trying to answer it as best I can. I mean, in the moment, they were each so fun, all these big ones that you've mentioned off the top. I mean, Aliphine running 2:26 was really important for her development because she hadn't had a good marathon, and that's one of the big reasons she came to our group was to figure out the marathon. So I felt the giant sense of responsibility to figure it out, and her running 2:26 6-minute PR. I mean, I was elated, and then the next week for Scott to run so well in Boston. I mean, obviously that meant a ton. I mean, we've worked together for 3.5 years, and so it's a big deal. And Boston, I mean, obviously from an outside perspective, Boston clearly moved the needle more than anything else because it's Boston. It's one of the biggest sporting events in the world annually. So that meant a lot. Kellen's race in Prague, people don't know what was going on with her 4 weeks out, and she had a really tough 4 weeks leading up to that race for a variety of reasons. So for her to still go out and race fearlessly and run 2:26 was a huge deal. A national title is always big for Steph, and then even the 15-17 was big because it was kind of proof. It was very good internally for our group to see her do that because it's kind of what we've been saying and what we talked about in our culture meeting was part of our culture is, look, we don't need to be on the track all the time. We do what we do, and that's what leads to our best performances. She only did 2 track workouts between World Cross Country and Oxy. So, yeah, I mean, that meant a lot to me because it was justification for, or I guess it gave us a little bit of confidence in what we do, a little bit more confidence than we already had. So I don't know. They were all special. I guess if you made me say something, I mean, the World Marathon Majors are always a huge deal for us. So for Scott to run 2:09 and get 7th at Boston and compete for as long as he did up front, that was probably the biggest performance if we had to get down to the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, I think from a outside perspective, I mean, for sure, Boston gets the most media. I have to agree. Boston American man outside of Gale, hadn't broken 2:10 in so long. So to be the most recent guy to do it's pretty cool. Although I guess Jared is technically more recent because he was finished behind.
That's right.
But for both of them, and I'm sure everybody wants to be the first American, right? Like, sure, you guys would be happy if Jared had finished one spot ahead, but that means a little something special, right?
Oh, it's special, yeah. And it's special because Jared's a good dude, and he's a tough dude. And so to beat him is a big deal. And we saw that actually just from a business point of view, in New York when Scott was second American to Jared by 4 seconds. He just didn't get near the attention and love, which is fine, that he did in Boston being 15 seconds ahead of him. It's so crazy. I mean, we put out a little recap video on YouTube of his Boston performance, and it's got 150,000 views. And he's been on every podcast you could ever imagine, and all these video. He had to turn off Instagram on his phone because it just got too insane. So being the top American, it just makes a huge difference. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when I was getting ready for this, I saw that Boston video on your YouTube. I need to watch it. I haven't watched it. I didn't have enough time, but that's cool that it's getting that sort of reaction, and it shows what the kind of casual running fan follows, and also such a good performance. I mean, to go sub 2:10.
Yeah, I think so.
So congrats to that. Yeah, with your 3 top women, I would say, or marathon women. Alafine, Stephanie, and Kellen, they've all sort of done different things, but for me, it seems like, it could be like a little lab experiment. You can see what they're all doing in training. Like Kellen's got the best marathon. She's run 2:24.
Mm-hmm.
Now Alafine's run 2:26, and Kellen's sort of off marathon was 2:26 this year. Stephanie's been doing tremendous, but since with you, the one thing she hasn't done is run the good marathon yet. But do you view them, and they're all training for the same thing, right? Olympic marathon trials. So in training, is like Kellen ahead of them, or she has certain strengths that they don't have, and you view her as like, oh, she's my number one, and these are my 2 and 3 marathoners, or like, I mean, even maybe you couldn't even say that if you did, but how do you, and then in their training, you want them to work together, but they're going to be competitive. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, it's something I'm thinking about as we head toward the trials, because the 3 of them have not done a marathon segment together yet. So that will be an interesting dynamic. I certainly want to put each of them individually in the best position possible to make the team. From a training perspective, they are different. Kellen tends to be someone who pushes the envelope. She's not great at mastering being fast and relaxed and hitting the splits. She's very I don't know how you would say it. She's just, I think everybody knows this from being an athlete, or anybody that's listening that is an athlete. Some of those athletes, they just always want to beat the splits, and Steph is more the type that wants to hit them exactly, which is a benefit in a lot of ways, because, and you see it in the 5K at Oxy, she's able to run fast and relaxed, where Kellen is constantly practicing not being relaxed. And so sometimes you see that in her races, and we're working on that. Alafine is kind of a little bit more like Kellen, so we're working on that with her as well. And she actually got a big dose of that in her segment, because Ben Bruce paced a lot of her workouts. So we forced her to really learn how to run efficiently, which was helpful. Hopefully all their strengths and weaknesses can kind of come together, and they can figure out how to use each other, I guess, to be as fit as possible individually for the trials.
Yeah, and Kellen seems like, maybe because she'd run 2:24 in the past, but she's able, once you've done that, you can try new things. Like she went out at 71 this year in Prague, or Rotterdam, Prague.
Yeah, Kellen, I mean, look, physically Kellen has, I don't think it's a knock on the other two to say that physically Kellen has reached a level in training that they have never reached when it comes to marathon training, for sure, or just training in general. Her fitness level, certainly 4 weeks out from Prague, was world class, 100%. Then she got basically pneumonia, and for the last 4 weeks never did a good workout, and there was all this kind of other stuff. She had foster kids all of a sudden that her and her husband were taking care of 4 weeks out from there. It was just a lot of stuff. But all that to say, just because you've reached that level in practice and you've reached it like at grandma's once, running 2:24, doesn't mean you don't still have work to do, and you still have to do it on race day. So the fact that she could go out, it wasn't just that she went out at 1:11, it was that the first 5K was 16:42, and at 10K they were at 33:20, which is 110 pace, 220 flat pace. So that's what was so crazy about that race. And yeah, she was in a position where she could take a swing at it. That wasn't what was supposed to happen. The pacers were supposed to be 1:11:45 even, which they were not. And she could have chose not to follow it, but she did. And I still think in a lot of ways it was very impressive that she was able to never bonk. I mean, she just sort of got incrementally slower, but she never hit the wall. I mean, she just, each 5K just got a little slower. And so maybe having that experience is a good thing, because you never know what's going to happen in the trials. Maybe it's going to be fast from the gun. We just don't know. I
thought it was a good run, and I didn't know anything about her getting sick and the foster kids and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sit there and I mean, that's not the first thing you want to tweet out or something after the race. Oh yeah, but what if this? It's just bad form. Nobody wants to hear that. So, but I know it happened. I know what the truth is. And I know how fit she was, and we'll see what happens this fall. She'll run a marathon this fall, but hopefully it can be a uninterrupted segment, and then it'll be a very different result, I think.
Right. Yeah. I joke this, like Olympic champions and stars, they never seem to get sick. They never seem to have these other problems that everybody else has, but they must have. And then one, they may be better and they can get around them. Well, too, if they had it the day of the Olympics, they wouldn't be the champion. You wouldn't hear about them.
Well, and Kellen takes on a lot, she takes on a lot, and she just isn't a person who could function well if all she did was run. And that's fine. And I know that's who she is. And you can't ask somebody to be somebody she's not, and did it cost her this time a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But, I also know that if she did the whole nap every day thing and dedicate her whole life to this, every hour of every day, she wouldn't have fun. And if you're not having fun, then you're not going to run well. So you got to make compromises a little bit.
Yeah. So she's got a bunch of foster kids?
Well, her husband and her have been trying to get foster kids for a long time now, and it's a kind of a process to go through all the applications. And all that paperwork was finally done earlier this spring. And the way it works, to my understanding, is you never know when you're going to get them. So if I have the timeline right, I think it was either 4.5 or 5.5 weeks out from the race, one of those Wednesdays, she literally had one of the best workouts of her life. It was totally insane. And then that afternoon, she got a knock on the door from social services, and they had 2 boys at their door, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so for the next week and a half, her life was just turned totally upside down. She was doing second runs at 9 p.m. and it was totally insane. And then sure enough, she got sick, which is not really that surprising. And, again, I'm not trying to make excuses. That's just what happened.
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
These things are related. I'm like, I didn't. Yeah, you get sick from kids. I didn't even realize they were related.
Yeah.
I'm taking 6 minutes off for marathon time. So
no, I don't. No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm not trying to sit here and say.
I'm just kind of joking a little bit. But
yeah. It affected training for sure. But we're not going to sit here and guess what it would have meant and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to move on.
Yeah, I feel like just even the way you're talking about her training, she still hasn't run one like she could.
We're working on it. Grandma's was really good. That was really good. But the next step beyond that is to figure out how to do it head to head right up against people, because in Grandma's, she was able to get away at halfway and run the whole thing basically by herself. And I think for her, that actually brought a level of comfort because that felt more like Lake Mary Road and the workouts we do. But of course, you can't get away with that at the trials or at a World Marathon Major. You have to bang heads, and so hopefully the trials segment, well, even this fall, where we get more workouts in with Steph and with Alafine, and they're all running together, I'm hopeful that will actually be a huge benefit for her in taking that next step and being able to do it right up against people.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but you were talking about her sort of pressing all the time.
Yeah, always pressing.
In races, and I had some high school dad email me this week, and he's like, my son's not showing it in the races and all this other stuff. He's sticking with these kids in training and not in races, and sometimes he starts too fast and all this other stuff. And first of all, I'm like, okay, if he's sticking with the kids in the races and in the training and not the races, he's probably training too hard.
Yeah.
You need to teach, like you said, it's a fine line because you want people like Kellen who can push, I feel like. And I'm curious if your coaching philosophy agrees with this. But you're also teaching the body to be like I think you said, like relaxed and fast. You're trying to run as efficiently as possible. There's no bonus points for running hard. You're trying to run fast. And to do that, you need to be as relaxed. So if you're always crossing the line in training, you're not teaching your body to relax. And then racing, same thing, right? If you're some people, like some really top high scorers, especially in the girls' side, they're never used to running with other people. So then they get in a race with somebody at the next level, and they're like, whoa, it's stressful mentally because they're with people and all that other stuff. And then they can't just run whatever pace that feels perfectly natural to them.
Yeah, I liken it to like a grade school or a high school basketball team doing layups, right? So you do layup after layup after layup after layup after layup, so it feels second nature. So when it happens, so when you have a breakaway in the game, it's a layup and you just hit it, it's no problem. That's what, to me, marathon effort is like. It should feel second nature. And you should be really, really efficient at it. But if you're constantly like pressing in practice and running a little faster than marathon pace, and if you're constantly like picking it up halfway through the workout and getting a little faster than you're supposed to be, then that's what your body's used to, and that's what it's going to do in the race. So you have to practice holding back and being controlled and really in control of your pace and your body. So we're working on it. We're getting there.
Yeah, if we're like critiquing a 224 and a 226, I feel like you're doing pretty well. So the team meets every day for practice? Like you guys, every run, or even if they're going to go easy, everybody gets together, meets, and goes out in a race way?
Yeah, six days a week. We try to do one weekend day on your own. And Monday mornings, a lot of times we run on our own because we have strength at 10 a.m. So we meet for that. But we're still meeting. So we meet every day outside of one on your own day on the weekend.
And I noticed like everything's logged on online. Like I saw the like today's runs are already on there.
Yeah. It's I don't know. To me, that's just part of our philosophy in terms of sharing with the fans, because we've always taken the approach that even though we do race a decent bit, it's still nothing like the NBA. They're playing 82 games a year, and there's a press conference after every game. So there's interviews after every game, and you just get so much more. And so we're just trying to give the fans as much as we can give them. I've never felt like it was some kind of disadvantage for us because the other groups, the other coaches, the other athletes, they believe in what they do just like we do. And so they're not trying to copy us. And even if they were, it's not all about the training. It's about the intangibles and the strength work we're doing and the belief we have in each other. So, the training is just a part of it.
It seems like you guys do a good job of, I don't know, you got the training stuff. That's on Final Surge, by the way, another LetsSprint advertiser.
Yes, our partners.
But then you've got like a YouTube channel, obviously your Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. But like, I feel like you guys do I don't know, I think someone called in our podcast one time and said, oh, Scott's popular because people can follow them, all their trainings posted. And I don't know, I'm not following it, but I'm like, yeah, you really could. Like, it's easy to sort of, once you start learning about stuff, it's easier to start rooting for people and following them and that sort of thing.
Well, I hope so. And that's why we do it on various channels, right? Because just like you say, look, you're not at this stage of your life, you're not just going to nerd out and go on our website every day and look at our training every single day. I don't expect that. But some people are, right? Some people are looking at it on Twitter, some people on Facebook, some people on Instagram. So you just put it out there. You just kind of put the tentacles out there and people will find us where they're going to find us,
I think it's cool. So let's take a step back and talk about how this group got here, how you got to Flagstaff. I just remember you emailing me throughout the years at various things, and you weren't always Ben Rosario, Hoka NAZ elite coach. You were a runner back in the day, that sort of stuff. So it sounds like I guess you're from St. Louis. Is that right, originally, Missouri?
That's right. Go Cardinals, go Blues.
I'm a Texas Rangers fan. You guys still owe us one.
I was at Game 6 and Game 7, 2011. Greatest 2 nights of my life.
I didn't realize that, like, what all these Cubs fans were about, but now that we haven't been back or anywhere close to getting back, I'm like, I get it now. Like,
oh yeah,
30 years could go by and they still haven't won the World Series. Damn you, Nelson Cruz. Yeah, so I wasn't even going to start with your own running career, but maybe that's where we should start. Kind of, I don't know, high school running in St. Louis. Is that your first memories of running? Like,
oh gosh, we can skip over this pretty quick. It wasn't very interesting, but yeah, I ran, and it was mid-90s, and as you know, that was kind of the doldrums. So my times weren't very fast, but no times were very fast. I remember a year where I think there was only one guy in the whole country who ran under 9 minutes for 3,200. So I came out of that and then went to college at Truman State, which is a D2 school. We ended up getting 4th in the country my senior year in cross country. And then I ran for the Hansons for 2 years after that.
All right. So you do Hansons, you run 218, and what's your 10K PR? What's your best running accomplishment?
I think my best running accomplishment is that I had range. Now, I was a jack of all trades and a master of none, but I ran a 4:03 mile and a 2:18 marathon. So that's decent.
Yeah, no, that is good. Makes you a good coach too, right? Because you've got a lot of experience in different things. So Hanson's through 2004 trials, 2005?
Yeah, I ran the 04 trials with Hanson's, and then I was on the team through the summer of 05, so 2 full years. And then I went back home that summer and took a job back home to St. Louis and took a job as the special events director for the Go St. Louis Marathon. And I did that for 1 year. And that was cool. I got to work with, the event side of things and did some cool stuff with their kids program and their mature mile with seniors. I was doing all kinds of stuff, going to schools and going to senior living homes and facilities and trying to promote health and fitness. It was fun. And then after that, in 2006, my buddy Matt Helbig and I started Big River Running Company, which was totally from scratch. It was a run specialty store. We opened it in 2006. And then by 2008, we had 2 locations. By 2010, we had 3 locations. And, we're very successful. We were very fortunate, but we worked very hard. And then in 2012, after 6 years, I was just burnt out, just fried, and needed a change. And so my wife and I and our 1-year-old daughter, I sold my half of the business and we moved to Flagstaff.
When you were owning these running things, were you still trying to compete, or you gave that up after the Hanson's deal?
No, I was competing still. In 2005, right after I came back, I was kind of lucky because St. Louis is so hot and humid, and so I was training for the Twin Cities Marathon, which was the U.S. champs in October of 2005, and so I was just doing all my workouts in terrible conditions, and then the race ended up being unseasonably warm and humid, and I got second place, and I won $20,000, which was more than I had won in 2 years. With the Hansons, which is no fault of theirs. It's just how it worked. And so I took that money, and that's what I used to start the store. And then Matt threw in money, and our friends and family threw in some money. And that's honestly, that was vital in being able to start the stores. Wow,
that's pretty cool. Yes, $20,000, that's not easy to come by in the sport of running.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It was really, it was awesome. Yeah. And then after that, I ran a couple more marathons, but they didn't go well. I ran the 2007 trials, but it was a disaster. I ran grandma's in 2006, and it was hot, and I finished, and I probably shouldn't have. And I swear, like, something in my body after that, I couldn't run long runs anymore like I used to be able to. And I'd get out in these marathons, and I just feel not like myself and just fried. And it was really weird. So I don't know what happened physiologically or mentally or whatever, but then I dropped down in distance and ran a couple of mile races because it was just fun. And that's when I ran a 4:03 mile at age 29.
Really?
Which was
oh, wow. I figured that was college.
In college, I only ran 4:19. So it was, like, to your point earlier, a really good couple of years for me, 2008, 2009, because I did all these different workouts that I had never done before. And I was doing ancillary work and weights and drills and things that I had never done. And they really made me a lot faster. So I learned a lot, and I incorporate some of those things even today.
That's pretty cool, the 4:03 at 29 after getting second in the U.S. Marathon champs. So you're burned out. You moved to Flagstaff. Like, you're no job, no nothing. Like, what are you doing? You got a wife and kid? This sounds irresponsible. What's going on here?
Well, I had a chunk of change, obviously, from selling the business. So I could have done a lot of different things, but I came out to Flag because I had been out here for 3 weeks in 2007 training, and I loved the town. And I just knew it was a slower pace of life, which I definitely needed. I did take a job right away with Greg McMillan, who I knew, and did some marketing for him for his online coaching business for a year. And then my wife and I had all these little side hustles. We were selling some running T-shirts online and just doing a couple different things.
What was the thing called? The T-shirt.
Run Fan Shop. We were selling just various little funny T-shirts, running related, and we were breaking even, actually. I think we could have done okay with it. But it was just kind of a side hustle, like I said, because then in the summer of 2013, I started coaching Matt Yano. And then Eric Fernandez, who was a University of Arkansas kid that was a St. Louis guy that I knew, came out. And so I was coaching those two. And then when Greg's Adidas group dissolved at the end of 2013, then I started working with Steph Bruce and Ben Bruce and Scott Smith and Kellen Taylor, who are all still on the team, by the way, and Amy Van Alstyne. And it was just a good group. So that's when Jen and I, my wife and I, said, okay, well, now we found what we want to do. So we just got rid of all the side hustle stuff and stopped all that. And for a year, we just focused on the team. So I think we spent $40,000 of our own money in 2014 on travel and gear and little bonuses for the athletes and things like that. And, in the meantime, we were building our social media presence and our brand and making pitches to various companies. And then in 2015, that's when we signed with Hoka as our title sponsor in February. And we actually had a couple other shoe companies interested as well, which gave us leverage, which was nice and very important. So, it all worked out, and now we're in our second contract with Hoka, and we have a renewal option for a third contract that would take us through 2024. So, all is well.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like it's like it's a business. No one really thinks of it like that. But how does that work with the athletes? Are you guaranteed a certain budget to sign athletes, or the athletes are signed separately and it's sort of assigned to the team? Is there any difficulty ever with that?
Yeah, 100% it's a business. I mean, we thought of it as a business right away, So the way it works in general is, we get a lump sum from Hoka, and then underneath that, we're able to pay salaries to the athletes and to myself and to Ben as the assistant coach. And, we're able to pay for strength and conditioning work and massage and chiropractic and travel and all those things. So we're pretty much in charge of the budget internally, but Hoka, they're the ones that are paying for all of it. And then there's a bonus structure as well on top of that. So I think, obviously we have an NDA like everybody does in this sport, but we are a nonprofit, so you can see some of these things if you really wanted to. So like in the New York Times piece last fall, I should say, that they did on our team, I think Matt Futterman, who was the journalist, he looked it up, and I think the number he put out there was like $750,000 a year. So, underneath all that, we got to make all this happen. So it's not crazy, but it's a very nice budget, and we're very fortunate.
Yeah, Matt Fetterman, my neighbor.
Oh, nice. Great dude.
Yeah. He's got a running book coming out this spring, everybody.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's just kind of cool how you sort of created this thing, but I don't know. So it sounds like the athletes kind of work for you, not directly for Hoka kind of deal.
Yeah, correct. So their contract is with NAZ Elite, and our contract is with Hoka, which I think is a better way to do it. I think it's better for the athletes. It's better for the groups, but everybody does it differently. That's how we do it. And luckily, we have a very good relationship with Hoka. Mike McManus, who's the sports marketing manager, trusts me, and we have a good working relationship. And so, obviously, I do talk to him about the recruits and the different athletes we want to bring in and get his approval. But in terms of the actual contract, yeah, they're negotiating it with us, which is nice.
So do the athletes' contracts does the time frame match up with your contract with Hoka? Or I don't know, let's say Kellen, knocks it out of the park and runs 220. There's going to be a bonus with you guys, or the bonus is going to be with?
The bonuses are through Hoka.
Okay.
So the bonus structure is all through Hoka, and Hoka pays the bonuses. And so that's how that works. Obviously, we can't sign someone beyond when our contract ends with Hoka. That would be irresponsible. How would we pay that? But so it jives in that sense. And of course, the salaries are just like any other sport. The backup shortstop on the Yankees isn't going to get paid as much as the starting shortstop. So it varies based on credentials and value.
And are some people working on the side, or is everybody running full time?
A couple people are. Aaron Clark, one of the rookies, works at the candy shop downtown in Flagstaff. Danny Shanahan, one of the rookies, is doing a little bit of daycare work, and then a couple people work on the side even though they don't need to, just because they like to stay busy. So Steph has all her entrepreneurial enterprises with her coaching business and her camp, and her and Ben do that together. So, it just depends. But yeah. And then there are some of them that, obviously they just focus on running full time, like Scott Fauble, and that works for him.
And does your experience sort of with Hanson's, I don't know, did that lead to some of this now? Because like at Hanson's, you had to work in the stores. It's not easy work, right? Like, do you think it's a lot easier for people when they can just run?
I never want to say that it's the only way to do it, because like I said, whether it be Kellen or Steph, like some people need a little bit something else in their life, so I don't want to say it can't be done while working, but my preference is that they don't have to work, so that way they can do things on the side if they want, but they're choosing to do it, and they're in control of those hours and things like that. But my experience at the Hansons was certainly a formative time in my life. I always felt like, it was never some goal that I wrote down on my mirror, but I always felt like that would be a really fun thing to do, run a group like that. And when I was at the stores, when I was with Big River in St. Louis, we had sort of a sub-elite group that was kind of a mini version of what I'm doing now. And we got people to the trials and the marathon and on the track. And I coached all those people, and it was a lot of fun. And we tried to be really present in the community in St. Louis. And it's sort of again, a mini version of what we're doing now on a much larger scale. So all those things help me.
As you were answering that last question, I was listening to an audio message my brother sent me. He's got some questions for you. His first question was, why isn't the rest of the team on the same drugs that Stephanie Bruce is on?
Yeah. Ben Bruce told me that there was a message board thread that wondering about Steph and doping, and the easy thing to do is laugh it off and say, oh, it's like a compliment or something for people to think that. I mean, I guess you could do that. It's not a laughing matter, really. I mean, obviously, it's.
But no, but I figured like it's the ultimate compliment when people accuse me on my own forums of being on drugs, and I'm like, you think I'm on drugs? Like that means you think I'm good? Like I was so shocked because I'm like, I'm not any good, but you guys think I'm on drugs? Great, I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer that, it really is the fault of the drug sheets, right? That we have to think that every time somebody does well, which is really kind of shitty. But no, Steph's running really well right now because she's healthy, and she's really worked hard at being healthy. And so uninterrupted training for 3+ years is just paying off, and that's really what we're all trying to do is just put together uninterrupted training for long periods of time. And that's why she's doing well. That's why Fauvel's doing well. That's why Alphine and Kellen and the others are doing well. So no big secret.
And then his second question was about recruiting. He's like, college track is largely about recruiting. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but he's like, do you feel that way? Like if you could get the top guy out of college, I mean, just automatically your group would be almost at another level, or you're just starting with something that's easier to mold. Do you is the recruiting process really important? And I don't know, like Hoka doesn't have the budget that Nike has. Do you feel like that's just the rules of the game, or something you can work with, or you're hoping to get more budget? How do you view that?
Oh, he's right. I mean, you got to have the horses, I mean, you could raise Bill Bowerman from the dead, right? But if you give him 10 flat high school kids, he ain't going to produce a Steve Prefontaine. I mean, that's just how it is. So no, we're trying to get the best people we can. We're lucky that we have a pretty darn talented group. Kellen was third in the NCAA in the indoor mile. Steph was a 2-time All-American in the 10K. Alphine was a 14-time All-American. Alice Wright was multiple-time All-American. Matt Baxter. So we're pretty close. I mean, we got a lot of blue chippers. We don't have any national champions, but we've got a lot of people who are really good. Our budget is not unlimited. We can't just go out and get Edward Cheserek, who has 20 national titles or whatever. But we're getting really good people, and we're producing really good results with those people.
Yes, I feel like Matt Baxter's a good example. One, he's not American, so he probably doesn't cost as much. But two, he's second in NCAA cross.
Yeah, he's talented. Very
under the radar, but that's a very good pickup, I feel. And the third thing was somewhat related to resources, but he's like, why don't more groups do high-low training? I assume you guys do the high-low. I saw something on Alaphine's thing that she went to Camp Verde this week, and she was given very specific splits. She said it was important to hit them, which is important.
Yeah.
But why don't you think more people don't do high-low training? Is it like people don't like to do the driving, that sort of stuff? And then my brother went off on a tangent saying they could get you a helicopter and you could fly down much quicker.
We go down all the time. So I don't know. I mean, we go down we're in Camp Verde all the time. We go down to Sedona a fair bit, but I like Camp Verde better because we have a 3-mile loop down there on the road that we can use for all sorts of different workouts, and it's lower. It's 3,100 feet instead of 4,500 in Sedona. Yeah, I don't know. I think people do go down. I don't know what he means.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's why more people don't move to Flag and do it, but when I was in Flag, there was 5 people there. Now there's 50. Is there a real track in Camp Verde now?
No, it's a dirt track.
Yes.
We don't go to the dirt track much. It's a little slippy. I prefer the road down there.
Now, I was kind of curious when I saw Alaphine's thing. It said very important to hit these splits. Was that on the roads?
That was on the roads. Yeah, the reason I wanted her to make sure she hit those splits is because, like I was talking about earlier, her and Kellen just need to work on that. They need to work on being in control and being really efficient. And she's very early in her training coming off of Rotterdam. So, and she did a great job. And her and Danny Shanahan ran that workout together and they nailed it.
Well, I was glad, one, that you went to Camp Verde because I love Camp Verde. It seemed like more people went to Sedona, but I'm like, no, you want to get as low as quickly as possible.
That's right.
But then when I saw that workout with specific splits, I was like, oh, they must have a real track now. The track I ran on, there's no way you could hit specific splits. Like there might be more dirt one day than the day before.
Yeah, no, we're on the road and we got every quarter mile marked on that, around that whole 3 mile loop. And yeah, we go there all the time. I mean, now I know, like, scientifically, some scientists would want you to, or physiologists would want you to go down low for every single workout. But I actually think there's value to staying up here for some sessions or for a good bit of work, because it's so much harder. And maybe it's an old school thing to say, but there's something to doing a workout that feels really hard, and breathing really hard and controlling that up here at 7,000 feet. And then, of course, going down for a race and feeling like $1 million because you've been doing workouts at 7,000. So I think it's good to do a mixture.
I could see that. I mean, I almost always went down, but I do a few workouts on flag. But do you feel that altitude really helps people? Like you can sense your threshold much more. Like, and now if you're at 7,000 feet and you go over, you're done. Like, and I feel like at sea level, people can push too hard. They don't feel it. So maybe I feel like if you get used to training at even a moderate altitude too, like maybe then during a race, you can kind of sense like, okay, this is where I'm at. Okay, relax, let's calm down a bit. Or am I making this up?
I think you can handle the spikes better, in a race. So, when we have a little hill here in Flagstaff, your heart rate is going to spike so high, whereas then you go down and you're racing at sea level and somebody throws in a surge or you hit a hill, your heart rate doesn't get near as high as it does up here. So you're just able to handle it more. That's why I think altitude trained athletes typically handle hills and surges better, whether it be the East Africans or people in America that train at altitude. So that for me, that's what it is. It's just that ability to buffer changes in pace and changes in terrain better than if you're training at sea level.
That makes sense. Do you know much about the Carbon X shoes?
Well, maybe not as much as you guys. No, I'm just kidding. I know a good bit about them. I mean, I was involved, at least in terms of our athletes trying them out as the various iterations came down the pike. The latest iteration, so what's actually out that you can buy, I really like. Scott Smith wore them at the 25K, got second there. That was a big run. A couple of the athletes have been doing workouts over the last couple of weeks in them, and they're doing very well. So yeah, I mean, ask me whatever you want about them, but I do know a fair bit.
No, I was just curious, because I'm not a shoe guy. I have a pair. They're actually still on me. I love them, walking around, that sort of stuff. And also it's in my head, I think. So when I run now in them,
yeah,
I feel faster, and I don't know. They've got a lot of support, and I feel like my foot's angled a slightly different way, but I don't know if I'm making some of this stuff up. But then when I'm trying to press the shoe designers for some claims about the shoes, they don't want to go there. And I'm like, come on, tell me they're like 5% faster. Kind of joking around, but I was trying to press them a bit because I've never had the Carbon Rocket on. And I know that's what Scott ran 209 in. I know Cam Levins ran 209 in. And that's got a carbon plate, and there's all this stuff because of the Nike Vaporfly, the carbon plates and all this stuff. And I was like, well, the Let's Run people want to know which shoe they want to wear. So, but you coach marathoners. Do you think in the marathon people will be primarily racing in the Carbon Rocket, or the Carbon X is more versatile for training? The shoe also seems very durable, like for a racing shoe. Like I've been wearing it around, that sort of stuff. How do you view that, or to be determined?
Well, Hoka, first of all, is a cool company to work with because they are not requiring us to wear the Carbon X. They have the Carbon Rocket as well. They have the Rehi. So, for them, it's whatever works best for each of our athletes. So that's nice. And they stayed true to the Hoka DNA, I feel like, in this Carbon X. Hokas have always had that cushion with energy return in mind. They've always had that sort of meta rocker shape to them that's with the idea of propelling you forward. And they've been playing around with carbon in the midsole for a long time. We were trying out Carbon Rocket prototypes as early as 2015 when we started the group. So, and carbon also, by the way, that's not what makes any of these shoes, whether it's the competitors or the Carbon X, so great. I mean, Spikes have had carbon plates for a long, long time. It's the shape and the cushion and the way the shoe reacts to the ground that is making these new flats so valuable, right? So anyway, I think they're a good shoe, and we're just getting started. So I don't know what we're going to wear moving forward in all these races, but I do like both shoes. I like the Carbon X and the Carbon Rocket a lot, and no complaints so far from me.
I don't know. I guess I need to, the moral of the story for me is I got to start running again so I can test them all out.
Yeah, you and me both. I haven't tested them out either. I don't know what they feel like underfoot. I'm just asking each athlete, and I'm just asking them to keep an open mind because, you know, I don't want them to fall in love just because it's the newest shoe. I want them to run in whatever they feel is best. And I think that's good for the brand too, for Hoka, because then we can give a really genuine opinion when we're being asked questions about the shoe. And I think the fact that Scott ran so fast and Alphine and Kellen in variety of shoes, like Scott ran in the Carbon Rocket 209, but then Kellen and Alphine ran in the Tracer 226. So the Tracer is also a good flat. And that's kind of the flat we've been running in for a long time now, and there's nothing wrong with that one either. So I don't know. I think we shouldn't get too caught up in the shoe. I think we should get really fit, wear the shoe that works best for us individually, and you know, see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's good to have sort of options, because one place I don't want the sport to go is I don't want someone to win, and whether that's drugs or shoes or whatever, because they have a shoe that someone else doesn't have.
100%. I agree.
I mean, like, the more I think about this, even like, well, maybe with a record, it's less important because somebody else can get the shoes afterward. So like Walmsley, when he ran the time, the shoe wasn't available. So that's not really fair. But if you're just from a record perspective, like, okay, I guess somebody could go get the shoe now and run in it, whatever. But like, oh, the day of the Olympic marathon, you unveil some shoe and no one else has ever, and you know, to some extreme, let's say you put rollers on it or something. I mean, obviously that wouldn't be legal, but like, where do you draw the line? So the more options out there, the better. But yeah, me jogging with the dogs, not jogging. I'm tempoing with the dogs now because of this shoe. But yeah, the Hoka perspective, I feel like how they treat you is kind of how they've treated it. They're like, no, go explore the ultra marathon, do what you want. Oh yeah, these new shoes are coming out. I was like, that's it? And they're like, yeah. All right, cool. All right, we can figure something out. Related to that, yeah, do you personally get a bonus? Let's say somebody, Kellen Taylor, wins the Olympic marathon trials. Is there a bonus for the coach?
Well, the way we set up the contract this time, we did not do that. But that's not to say the first iteration of the contract did have coaching bonuses in there. And like, look, the bottom line is I just wanted to get the second one done, and my focus was on the athletes. I always figured it would shake out for me in the end if the program was successful long term. And so I wasn't big on pushing anything for myself this time around. I think next time around, you know, not to negotiate publicly here, but I just wanted to be in line with what other coaches are getting and how those bonuses are structured, and taking into account how some of the college coach contracts are structured. And, I think we'll get that done. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I never realized how it was done with you, so it's just sort of interesting. And is the travel separate, or like, I mean, you could bring on an extra athlete and that would come out of your pocket, right? Like,
well, it wouldn't come out of my pocket, but it would come out of the NAZ Elite General Fund. So my wife really works the books. So she's the one that budgets all the travel out. So basically at the beginning of the year, she harps on me to kind of give her a schedule as best I can figure what races we're going to be at throughout the whole year. And then she sort of overestimates how much the travel is going to be for everything and comes up with a travel budget. And then, just works on it all year, trying to make sure that we stay on task and stay on budget as the year goes on. But travel is something we figure out well beforehand. We're not just flying by the seat of our pants.
I guess, yeah. You personally have like a set salary?
Correct.
I guess it's a nonprofit, so you wouldn't get to keep it. So
yeah, we have a board of directors, and they approve all these things as well.
Wow, sounds I guess it's a nonprofit. It's got to be above board, but very cool. I think that's pretty much. I've asked everything. I've learned a lot about the team, the program, that sort of stuff. So thanks for taking the time. But maybe to sort of end it, what should we be looking forward to from the team? Is it all geared around 2020? I kind of started with this question, but sort of someone who's listened this far, what should they be expecting from your team in the next year or so?
I don't think it's all about 2020. I think, again, with our group being involved in the marathon, although we're good at a variety of things, luckily with the big city marathons, those are really important too, So I think you'll see us continue to compete in a variety of events, track, cross-country, road, big marathons, obviously national championship type races, and just keep getting better. And yeah, come the trials, of course, we're going to be ready to roll. We're going to be ready on the day. And I don't remember if it was you or your brother, one of you in the podcast that Stephanie was on, you were giving us a compliment, which is nice, but you said, I'd love to see somebody from a smaller team make the team. And I would just like to say, I don't know how small. I mean, we're pretty big. We've done a lot of stuff, and we get a lot of money from our sponsor, and we're winning national titles, and we're placing in World Marathon Majors. And outside of two groups in Portland, I'm not sure who's bigger than us, but I think we're going to continue to try to compete at a world-class level.
Yeah, that's true. But people root for the underdog. So I
don't mind being the underdog.
I was giving you a compliment. You're still the underdog.
That's fine. I'll be the underdog.
Too big, you become the evil empire.
That's right. I'll be the underdog. That's fine.
I mean, Nike does tremendous things, but because they're so big, people love to shit on them. So
that's right. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, they do some stupid stuff too, but when you're the biggest, everyone notices it. So
that's right.
You're like you're big on the sports analogies. So you're like a basketball or something. You're not a UNC or Kentucky or something, but you're the next level.
That's right. I'll take it.
You can still get the Final Four and win some national championships.
Oh, I got one more for you on that same line of thinking. Jonathan, who I love, my favorite sports running journalist.
You can call us out for anything right now.
Yeah, I'm going to call you out for this too, but it's in a fun-natured way or good-natured way. So he said he doesn't see any way Kellen Taylor could make the Olympic marathon team, which is fine. I get it on paper, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's a hot take. That's fine. That's a fine hot take. I'll say this. If after the fall he still thinks that, I'll run a marathon myself. And I don't think I've run over 9 miles in a year. So that's my challenge to Jonathan. No other side of the bet. It's a one-sided bet. If he still thinks she has no chance after the fall, I'll run 26.2 miles.
All right, sounds good. And he should listen to this because the pneumonia, he's got to factor in the pneumonia thing, her getting sick. Real quick, what are the fall marathon plans for your team, or are they still up in the air?
Well, we can't say because of the contract stuff, but Alifine's going to run one, Steph's going to run one, Kellen's going to run one, Scott Smith's going to run one. So we just have to wait for all those announcements to come out.
So everyone but Scott Fauble?
Yeah, Fauble probably won't because, he ran New York and then Boston. So he'll probably work on some other stuff and then get ready for the trials.
And as a coach, have you heard anything about the Olympic marathon qualifying process from USATF or anyone else?
A little bit. We've gotten some emails and I've had a couple phone calls, but as far as I understand, it's still being figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of shocked. It sounds like talking to some people involved with this, there's not been a lot of communication.
There's been. I don't want to say that. They've been very nice to me. Mike Scott, who works for USATF, called me right after the IAAF thing came out, and so we've had communication, and there's been emails to the athletes, but I just don't think there's a final decision yet. And for us, it doesn't. I don't think it's going to really affect us much either way. So we're just whatever. We'll just be ready on the day.
Yeah, you're sitting pretty now with Scott's time, so you probably don't want the rules to change for the better.
No, whatever. I think. My hope is that it's top 3 make it, and that's what I hope.
Okay. Well, pass on your bet to John.
Yeah.
John's too honest. He can't still say she has no chance just to make you run a marathon. I don't think he'd do that. So.
No. It's all good,
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
But I was sort of shocked when he said that. He loves the blue blood talent and that sort of stuff. But the motto of our website, we've done this a couple of times. The motto of our website is where your dreams become reality. So of course she has a chance. I mean, I was thinking she got 4th last time, but she got 6th. But she like made that race. She went for it. And to tell me like 4 years later she's not going to have a chance, and then also to hear you talk the way you talked about her training. Once you talk to coach and really, that opened some eyes to me. You're not just going to like play her up for the sake of playing her up. You've seen a lot of stuff in training. So after listening to this, I think your marathon, you're safe.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Thanks.
All right, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.